I'm not going to go to the gym and work out with a fat dude who's telling me to lose weight. Like, why the fuck should they listen to you? What have you achieved? What have you done? I honestly believe, and part of the reason why I think I'm so good as a coach is I believe that everybody should be better. And there's something that when I speak to people, I see them for what they have inside of them, not how they present themselves. That's made me a world-class coach, but it's also the thing that pisses me off about people because a lot of people can't see their own greatness. I can see it. It's just how do I extract that out of them?
Your intimate partner will kill your enthusiasm or lead you to your successes.
Fuck yeah. So especially with men, when we look at, I studied a lot of ancient Chinese philosophy back years ago, and I can dive deep into that later. But when you look at the difference between masculine and feminine energy, they had this concept. And this concept around masculinity and femininity described everything in the universe. And masculine traits, they called fire and wood. So if we think about a tree has deep roots. It's hard to push around. It's very strong. You know, if you punch it, it's very fucking stable. And so I love using that metaphor. Men are supposed to be stable, grounded, earthy, and they hold the earth together. So without having something with roots that holds the soil together, the soil breaks away. Now, feminine energy is earth energy. So if we talk about, earth energy, it can be beautiful and radiant one day. And so you wake up and you're like, wow, sunshine, this is amazing. And then the next day the hurricane comes and it's like ripping roofs off of houses and shit. So feminine energy can be very destructive, as can masculine energy. But masculine energy, when it's also fire energy, so it can flare up, but it can die down quick. Two dudes at a bar, pissed off with each other, walk outside, punch each other in the face because they flare up, and then it's over and done with. A dude in a relationship with a woman, if we're talking heterosexual relationships, even though homosexual relationships normally have the same, masculine and feminine, the masculine person will flare up quick. So they'll say what they have to say. They might get aggressive in their tonality or aggressive in their verbal communication. I mean, they might get physically aggressive as well, but that's, that's probably, out of balance masculinity as well. But they'll flare up quick and then they just die down and it's calm and it's over and done with. So in a relationship, couples will come to some of my events and they're like, the guy will normally say, I don't understand why she doesn't just get over it. Like I say what I have to say and it's over and done with. But he flares up and cools back down again. Also masculine energy, like fire can be warming. So my wife calls me her electric blanket, because I get in bed at nighttime and I'm like hot. I'm in my boxer shorts and shit in the middle of winter and she's like, rugged up in a onesie with a beanie on and like, she's got two quilts on. So I'm her electric blanket because I'm warm all the time. So that fire energy is the drive, the determination, the let's get shit done. So they flare up quick but die down quick. Then you've got the wood energy, which is strong, holds everything together. Earth energy, though, can be radiant and beautiful one day. So like some days I roll over and I look at my wife and I'm like, man, she's amazing. She gets up in the morning, she's all bubbly and bright. So feminine energy brings this amazing, beautiful energy to life. Like feminine energy is life, if we think about it. But then you've also got water energy. So they're very cooling, very calming. I can be pissed off about something. Oh, fuck this and fuck that in business. And my wife's just like, hey man, just like calm down. Give me a hug. And I'm like, I don't need a fucking hug. And she's like, come here. And then she like cuddles me and I'm like, oh. And then, like I half fall asleep on her lap. So feminine energy is very cooling, very calming, very relaxing, and it can cool down that fire. So the way that the Chinese thought about this idea of masculine and feminine energy is that they both are in flux with each other. Too much masculine energy is a problem, but too much feminine energy is a problem. Now, as a male, males don't just have masculine energy. We have feminine energy as well. So a dude who's working hard, who's grinding, who's fiery. So let's say they've been up in the mines. They get home all of a sudden and they just want to relax. They need that feminine energy to heal again because nature is healing. It's what they call the earth energy. Someone probably is just like logging onto the podcast now. Like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But it's a metaphor. Like they didn't use it for science. They use it as a metaphor of how things work together. Now, guy gets home from the mines, walks in the house. Wife is like, well, you've been away for 3 weeks now. You better look after the kids. But he needs that earth energy. He needs to heal. He needs that calm. He needs the beauty and the radiance to sort of give him life again. So when dudes work hard, they need to relax and chill for a little bit. And if they don't have chill time, they just burn out. And that's the fire. It just runs out of wood and it's done. So that's happening quite a lot in our society where guy works extremely hard. He's fiery. When I say aggressive, I don't mean aggressive in his demeanor. I mean aggressively pursuing shit in life, trying to achieve things, trying to build things, trying to create things. And then he gets home and it's like, yeah, but now you need to look after the kids. Now you need to do this. And so he's just on all the time. And then eventually on the weekend, he's like, you know what? I just want to relax. I just want to go to the shed and fuck around with my car, or, I just want to sit and watch some sport. Well, you're not doing enough stuff around the house. And so he gets grinded. That there is a destructive relationship. Now, I call people on this all the time and I get myself in trouble, but fuck it, it is what it is. People talk about suicide rates in men and there's this issue with suicide, but people don't know a lot of the challenges of what causes it, what creates it. Now, there's correlation, there's causation, but a big correlation is that women, what they call helping, is often classified as nagging to men. So if you consistently say, you didn't wake up today and you didn't brush your teeth, that's one. Then they go, you need to look after the kids. You haven't been home enough with the kids. And it's just picking away. That's like taking a little small axe and just slowly chipping away at the bottom of the fucking tree. Eventually that tree's going to topple and fall. And so there's always, like with men as well, especially men who are unstable and don't really have a mission in life or something like that. And I'll come back to your question and answer it because I've gone off track. But you've got this, if we talk about the tree, if the tree and the fire don't have direction, like if a man doesn't have a direction or a purpose or a mission in life, something that he's trying to accomplish and something that he's trying to achieve, it leaves him completely lost and unfulfilled. And like I was even talking to a dude yesterday who, he's a career-driven guy and he's just like, I don't know, man. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if this is the right career. I'm just doubting myself all the time. I can't make decisions. And I was like, fuck, that's a bad spot for a dude to be in. Like, we've got to have drive towards something, whether it's our fitness goals or our fitness ambition, or whether it's, our family goals, whether it's our financial goals. We need to have something to work towards. If we don't, for men, it's really destructive. So coming back to that point that I made is that your intimate partner, the person that you're with, is probably going to be one of your greatest success tools or one of your greatest fucking weapons. Because I've watched dudes have their nuts ripped off and it's put in the woman's purse and they don't get them back. And you just meet this meek, fragile individual dude with bitch tits who just walks around and he's just, you can tell they've got no life. You just talk to them, they're like, oh yeah, I might go to the footy this weekend. And I'm like, cool. So you'd rather watch other people fucking win in life? Because that's what you're doing, right? Like, I watch all these dudes who have no drive, no ambition, not getting anywhere in life, not fucking achieving anything. And I watch them on Saturday night, they watch footy game. And they're like, we fucking won. Fuck all, like, Port win, Collingwood fucking suck. And I watch them and I'm like, you have now given way to your idea of achievement is somebody else on a football field that you call we, when you haven't done shit in your life to lead to any form of success, but you're celebrating their fucking win and you feel like part of that team. The fuck have you done? And so it gives this, especially for a lot of men who are lost, sport or watching other people achieve and feeling like they're part of something, give them that sense of winning when they're actually fucking losing in life. And so I don't mind sport. Like I like sport. Like there's lots of good things to come out of sport. It can create camaraderie and, it can give us a purpose and things like that. But don't mistake it for what it is. You're essentially paying for a ticket to sit in a grandstand and watch other dudes run around, get paid extremely well, and they're crushing it in life, and you're in the grandstand celebrating, and then when they lose, you're fucking miserable for the next week. How did you allow something else outside of yourself to drive the way you feel about your own life? And so coming back to the question, one of the most important decisions that a person can make is the person that they're going to spend their life with and who you surround yourself with. There's so much scientific data and evidence, and, it's even just spoken about in personal development, like the 5 people you spend the closest amount of time with is who you become. I'm very careful about surrounding myself with the right people. And I have been for a long time because I used to surround myself with the wrong people. My best friend ended up in jail he was accused of major drug importation. And he went down one path and I went down another. I've had other friends who have drug addiction and alcohol and things like that. And I watch them these days and they're overweight, they have beer bellies, they got bitch tits, and all they do is they just get together on the weekend and all sit around and, smoke certain substances and shit like that and drink alcohol, and then they're back at work on Monday for another fuck it, it's another week again.
Yeah.
And so, that's not the environment that I want to be around. I honestly believe, and part of the reason why I think I'm so good as a coach is I believe that everybody should be better. And there's something that when I speak to people, I see them for what they have inside of them, not how they present themselves. That's made me a world-class coach, but it's also the thing that pisses me off about people because a lot of people can't see their own greatness. I can see it. It's just, how do I extract that out of them? How do I give them? I mean, there's a lot of people who want my help, but at the same time, they're not really ready for it. And, in life, pain's one of our greatest motivators. So sometimes you just got to let people sit in their own shit for long enough to realize that they need to be motivated to change. They need to be motivated. So, come back to the question again. The person that you're going to spend probably the most time with is your intimate partner. And so they're going to have one of the greatest bearings on your successes and your failures. You want to make sure that if you're growth driven, they're growth driven. If you're ambitious, that they support your ambition. That if you're masculine, that they understand that in any environment, whether we like it or not, and whether society wants to create bullshit narratives and ideologies, that the truth is that when you're in a relationship, both people play a role, and those roles have to be very, very fucking clear, and you need to have common objectives as a couple to work towards. So without those things, there is massive problems.
Yeah. Would you say, like, with the roles though, is that like, so obviously, you've very well defined kind of how you and your partner have the masculine, the feminine, and that sort of balance that you have as well.
Yep.
Some people may have a slightly different definition. It's what they want. It's obviously a slight variation, and that's going to vary from person to person. So it's more about that you're on the same wavelength, not necessarily that this is the one way. Chances are, look, I am 100%, I agree. Like, deep down, I'm a man. These are like, I have these masculine urges. This is 100%. But there's going to be some fluctuation as to how far that goes for some people and how far, but it's managing to make sure that you're on the same page so that it doesn't cause conflict.
Yeah, it's having something that people have lost in this day and age that, I mean, a lot of people come to my events and seminars, is there's the ability to communicate and the ability to lead. Now, you can't lead yourself, or you can't lead others unless you lead yourself. So there are all these people in this day and age that are like, well, people should do this and people should act that way. And I'm like, why the fuck should they listen to you? Like, what have you achieved? What have you done? Like, I'm not going to go to the gym and work out with a fat dude who's telling me to lose weight. Like, when did that become logical?
Yeah.
When did it become logical that we, in this day and age, we go, you have to be a financial planner to give financial advice, yet your financial planner's fucking broke? Have you ever asked your accountant how much money they have? Have you ever asked what investments they have? People these days just go, well, someone's got a qualification, therefore they must know stuff. But it's one thing to know things, and have knowledge, but it's another thing to go and execute on that knowledge, and the execution's the hard shit. That's where you have to face yourself. Like, adversity creates character. So a lot of people know what they need to do, they just don't do it because they don't want to go through the adversity, they don't want to have the challenge. So leadership and communication is so important in this day and age, and people are really bad at it because we've been told this false ideology, which is, if the world changes, we feel better. If people act differently around us, just even on planes these days, I see people with, for example, like you can be in an airport and someone is behaving in a certain way because they don't like that they're in an airport, but it affects everybody else around them. Everybody else loses their rights because of that one individual that has a certain emotional response. Like, let's say they've got social anxiety. So now everyone around them has to adapt for their social anxiety instead of them adapting to the fucking environment. Now, whether we like it or not, the environment is always going to change around us. Like, we have to be adaptable. If I'm in a church, I'm going to act different than when I'm in a nightclub. But these days, people are going into a nightclub saying, I want to listen to music, but I don't want it too loud. And then they complain about it. And so we've created this society of complainers and chronic complainers. But that has to do with self-leadership and self-governance and accountability and responsibility, which I don't know where it got lost. Like, I think part of it is I'm a Gen Y. I think Gen Ys started losing it, but I think Gen X's are also massively at fault. Back baby boomers is like, you fall over, you skin your knee, get the fuck up and keep going. Like, I'll give you a little hug. Like, my grandma would give me a hug, but my grandfather's just like, you'll be right, get up.
Yeah.
Now we have generations where it's like, you hurt yourself, take the day off of school, maybe we need a week off. And so there's this like dysregulation of responsibility in our society. Now, when it comes back to relationships, that affects relationships massively, because I can go to my friends and say, and I watch Dudes do this all the time, and they should not fucking do this. If there's a guy out there who is blaming their partner and whinging about their partner, you are destroying your relationship without even knowing it. Everything in life expands or contracts. Nothing stays the same, and that's universal. Everything grows or dies. That's nature on this earth. Now, growth comes through stress. Expansion comes through pressure. So we need to have pressure. We have to have stress. Now, when there's stress in a relationship or pressure in a relationship, dudes go out, they get around their mates and they're like, fucking bitch, won't let me do shit. And then they just complain about crap all the time. And then their friends are like, yeah, my fucking wife does that too. When you look at what that does, you have appreciation. Anything that appreciates goes up in value, or you depreciate, which means it goes down in value. If you're talking about your partner like that, are you appreciating or depreciating them?
Definitely depreciating.
Fuck yeah. That relationship is going down in value. You're talking about your partner that way. Eventually, that relationship is going to be completely damaged. And she's probably doing the same thing with her friends. And she goes, oh, he doesn't understand my emotions and shit like that. And the friends are... What we need to do is we need to get back together and go, right, this is how dudes work. This is how women work. There is masculine energy and there's feminine energy. Men have more testosterone than women on average. Now, there's always exceptions to the rules, and you always get that one, dickhead in your comments who's like, yeah, but I'm not like that. You're the fucking exception to the rule. Shut up. Yeah, I get guys that are like, well, I sound like I'm more feminine. I'm like, you probably are, and your partner's more masculine. There's no problem with that. There's dudes that are more feminine, and there's women that are more masculine. But overall, if you generalize, most men are more masculine than most women. Men have more testosterone than women on average. There are some women out there who are fucking beasts, and they might have more testosterone than what I do, especially if they're smashing gear, right? But the thing is that when there's always exceptions to the rules, and in situations, a lot of the time we have to generalize. But the way that a man's brain works is different to a woman's brain. There's enough scientific evidence to show that. Testosterone massively changes the way that we work as people. And there's plenty of studies on this as well. So we're going to be more aggressive. We're going to be more dominant. We're going to be more driven in cases. But that's not saying that women can't be driven and women can't be aggressive. They are aggressive, just in different forms. They're more in the feminine form. So coming back to the relationship part, one of the first things that you have to do is, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you have to sit down and go, right, what are our common objectives? What are we trying to achieve? I sat down with my wife and I literally had this conversation because I was trying to grow a business, and she would say to me, I don't like the fact that we work so much and yada, yada. And we would clash. And so I tried to adapt to what she wanted, and I was fucking miserable. I gave up on my goals.
And then it can cause resentment and things like that as well, doesn't it?
That's exactly what happened. So I became resentful to her. So I got pissed off all the time with her. She would be pissed off that I wasn't driven. And then I would get frustrated because we were in a financial position where we were struggling, because I would work for a little bit and then focus on me being burnt out and tired and needing to relax more. When the truth is, I just want to gas it in life. So I sat down with her and we grabbed a piece of paper, or actually a whiteboard. And I said, right, let's create common objectives. What are your goals? And I said, look, here's the thing. What type of house do you want to live in? Now, my wife loves nice big house, all of that stuff. And by the way, she's the chief of operations in our business. She's a fucking weapon. Like, she's an amazing person. Like, just the way she works is brilliant. And she said, I want this beautiful house and da-da-da. I said, what do you think it's going to cost? And it was a couple of million. And I went, all right, cool. So we write down a couple of million. Now, you want to travel? Yep. You want to travel backpackers, or you want to travel business class? Okay, business class. Excellent. How much a year are we going to put into business class flights? I don't know, maybe 50, 80K. All right, 50, 80K. All right. Now, when we travel, we staying in backpackers? We $30 a night, or are we doing like 500 to 1,000 a night? Like, where are we staying? And she's like, well, I want the luxury. If we're going to work our ass off, so I went through and I'm like, right, we need to build a business where we're probably making anywhere between 10 to 50 million a year just to live that lifestyle. What do you think that's going to take? And I watched her. She sat there and she was like, yep, fuck, I get it. And I was like, cool. Is that what you want? And are you okay with that? And she was like, yeah, I'm in. And I was like, good, I'm in. And then from there, we sat down and we went, okay, now let's look at roles. So in the company, I'm the face of the brand. I'm normally the ideas person. Based on my personality type and my personality profile and all that sort of stuff, I'm very much a creative individual, problem solver, people person, extroverted. She's the opposite. Introverted, systems orientated person, very grounded, very logical, whereas I'm very adaptable. And we sat there and we went, okay, let's say dinner. Who cooks dinner most of the time? And I said, look, I'm happy to hire a chef. I'm happy to eat takeaway. What do you want? And she said, well, I don't really want to hire a chef and stuff like that. And I said, cool, that's your responsibility. You're responsible for dinner. And she said, okay, I'm responsible for dinner. And I said, okay, but now what happens when you can't be fucked because you've had a busy day? And she said, well, and I said, good, you're responsible for ordering Uber Eats. You're responsible for that because that's your responsibility and your accountability. And she said, that's fair. Now, do I want to cook? Yeah, I'll cook. I actually enjoy cooking. So I'm happy to cook, but she needs to tell me, I don't want to cook tonight. Do you want to cook or do you want Uber Eats? Because I don't want to get there at 7:00 at night when I walk out from doing podcasts or coaching calls and shit and go, what's for dinner? And she's like, well, I don't fucking know. How about you cook? And then we have an argument. Someone has to be accountable. Like if you run a business, a person is accountable for an outcome. In relationships, couples are just like, yeah, you do what you want, I'll do what I want, but then I'm going to get pissed at you when you do what you want. And it just creates a clusterfuck. And there's even people who are listening to this now who I guarantee are getting triggered by this shit. And they're like, well, I wouldn't do that. And I like, what's this, like the 1930s? Do what you want, right?
But
like
if it's an agreed upon, and I think that's the point you're making here as well. It's like, there's nothing wrong with if she turned around and went, or you went, I want to cook every night. I still want to work 12 hours a day. Yeah. I want to cook though. That's okay. Or like, it's the roles, it's the communication. And I think
that's exactly one thing
that I commonly, like, I mean, I'm only 24. So I've only been in like one serious relationship before. And I see it with my friends. And I'm like, I'm starting to, speaking with people like yourself, realize it's like, these are the conversations you actually need to have way earlier. When you feel like you don't want to have these conversations, you should fucking have the conversation. It's like, let's sit down and ask these questions, because I don't want to get to 30 and then this person be like, oh, the life's not exactly like, look, okay. Can you make it work? Can you meet someone else? Sure. That doesn't mean I want to put myself in at a higher risk of that situation playing out. So I want to put these ground rules into play earlier on. So if I start to meet people in the next year, 5 years, whatever it may be, these maybe don't scare them on the first date. Be like, right, listen here. Like I think, like, I don't know, you'd probably know Patrick Bet David. I think he talked about doing that on like his second date with his wife.
Other cultures, like, they do that though.
Yeah. But I guess like, sure, wait a couple if you want to, but it's got to happen early because the resentment will come through otherwise.
100%. You know, like a lot of this stuff, people don't realize my background and how many people that I've worked with. And I see dudes come to me all the time. And one of the biggest complaints, especially of like small business owners who are tradies, they will say to me, my wife wants the Range Rover and the lifestyle. So they want the Louis Vuitton handbag. They want the Range Rover, the white Range Rover in the driveway with the black rims. They want to go on holidays. They want to take the kids away. They want, you know, their little daughter or whatever to be wearing like, you know, a Gucci outfit and shit. So they want that. But then at the same time, they want me home at 5:00 every night. And then the guys will say to me, they compare me to their friends' husbands who work a 9-to-5 job, who don't really have anything going on in life, who have no future, no ambition. And they will literally say like, my wife complains and says, oh, you know, I don't know, you know, how they can go away and not stay somewhere nice and not live a nice lifestyle. But then that wife still complains about him working after 5:00. Yeah. I wish you were home more. I wish you took the kids to sport. Like, why do I have to do all this shit? And there's just there's like a disconnection between what it actually takes to achieve, because that conversation never happens. You know, it's not her fault. Like, she might not know any better. Like, if her parents were 9-to-5 workers, she's used to living that lifestyle. When I meet women or even men whose parents were entrepreneurs, they get it. They work like 100-hour work weeks. They're always away. Some of them accept it. Some of them don't. But it's important to really understand what it takes. You know, I had this conversation this morning, a pretty harsh conversation with another coach. And this coach came to me and he's like, I want to build my business, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, cool, I'll get you to 100K pretty quickly, like, you know, in your business. Now, he's been in business for a long, long time, but he's not getting good results. And I was like, look, here's what you need to do. Here's the steps. Here's the process. Here's what you need to do. Anyway, he started after the first month talking about burning out. Now, I work harder than what he does and said, look, man, you've got this emotional pattern in your head where you think that money is going to make life easier, and it doesn't. It just makes everything harder. It amplifies everything. So I said, you need to work on your emotional shit, because money's not going to solve that. It's going to make it worse. And so I put the pressure back on him. Anyway, I wake up this morning and he sends me this big long message and he's like, you know, I just feel like you don't understand me, and I feel like, you know, you just don't listen properly, and I feel this and I feel that. And I was like, dude, this was my message back. I said, dude, I understand what you're saying, but you essentially paid me for 3 months of coaching for the outcome that within that 3 months, I was going to get you to 100K, right? 100K in 3 months. And I said, I can easily do that. But what you're telling me now is that the 100K is not important and the growth of your business isn't important. Your emotional validation is important. If you had come to me as a coach and said to me, I want an emotional support dog, I would have told you that I'm the wrong coach and that you should probably go get a fucking dog, not hire me. Because I help people to get outcomes and to achieve results. And look, I'm adaptable. Like if someone's upset or family member dies, or there's a time and a place. Like, I have staff. I've got staff, and if they've got shit going on at home, and I notice at work, I'll ask them. I'm like, what's going on? And if they tell me that they've got stuff going on at home, I'm like, look, just take the day off. Just take the day off. Get your stuff together, and we'll sort it out. Because I want the best for them. But when you pay me to get an outcome, I have to be focused on that outcome because that's what you're paying me for. To flip that around and say, I need an emotional support dog, that's not what I do. So I guess where I'm going with all this is that a lot of the time you really need to know what you want in life. So I have a formula, and it's clarity times by standards plus environment equals success or results or fulfillment. If you're not clear on what you want, your standards are dog shit. Because how can you have standards when you don't know what standards look like because you're not sure what you want? So all these people come to me and they're like, I want my relationship to be better. Well, what does that look like? Well, I don't know. I just want her to accept everything that I do. And I'm like, cool. So you go out and you have a bender with your mates and smash bags. You just want her to be like, hey, I'm glad you had a good weekend. No, fuck you. She's
probably not going to happen.
Yeah, she's going to tell you that you're a piece of shit because you are. Like, that's you. The goal of a relationship is to grow. Like, life is about growth. So I want someone in my relationship who looks at me when I'm smashing a pizza, when I've just set a goal of losing weight, to say, hey, the fuck is wrong with you? I want someone who's going to challenge me and say, hey, you need to get on top of that shit and push me a little bit. Not too far, but I need someone to push me a bit. Same in business, same in life. Like, you need people around you who are going to hold you accountable to your own goals. Anyway, I've gone massively off track.
No, it's good.
We need to talk about this stuff. We need to set those standards, and people just, I don't know, like in business owners come to me all the time. Oh, fucking staff are fucked and and I'm like, are they clear on what you want?
But yeah, that's tradies a lot of the time.
It's always tradies, right? They're like half of my clientele, if not 3/4. And they always come to me, oh, everyone's fucked. And I'm like, but you literally walked into work and said, go do this job. If they could just go do the job in the way you wanted it, they'd be a business owner. You don't have staff. The fact that they're staff, they want more stability. They need more help. They might need to be taught some stuff. Maybe they're not ready to go out on their own. There's a whole bunch of reasons why they're a staff member. And it's not just because they don't want to because they don't have the skills to run a business. It's that some people just don't want to run a business. They don't want the pressure and the stress and all that shit. Like, one of my staff members, her family's her highest value. So for her, family will come over work all the time. And that's cool. At least she has clarity around what's important to her.
She's honest.
Yeah. But I said to her, like a little while ago, I said, if you hit these sales targets and help me to hit these sales targets, I'll give you 10 grand cash. And she's like, yeah, all right, whatever. And then like a week later, I was like, hey, we're going to fly down to Adelaide, because she's a people person as well. I said, we're going to fly down to Adelaide for an event. You can help out. And what I'll do is I'll book a dinner for me, you and Jess. And she's like, oh, I would love that. She was more stoked about the fucking dinner than she was the money. Yeah. Because money doesn't drive her.
But I think that's really interesting as well, is that, I mean, there's a lot of wild wankers, I think, on the internet where they'll be like, oh, you work a 9 to 5, you're just lazy, no, it's not that. Like, it's priorities. And also, you know what? If you live in Australia, this is two sides to this equation I find really interesting. So one of the guys that I PT at the gym that I PT at, he's moved to Australia from South Africa only for a couple of years now. He's been here. And he just raves about the beaches, the walks he can go on, the time he's now got a little boy, because in South Africa, he didn't want to have kids there because it was a dangerous place and he couldn't see himself raising a kid.
Yep.
So if I said to him, like, why aren't you working like 14-hour days? And why aren't you, and he's like, he'd look at me and go, Jordan, look at where I live. It's beautiful. I can enjoy this time and space. He's not lazy.
Yeah.
He's worked so hard to bring his family here. So now he wants to raise that family in this wonderful environment. That doesn't make him a lazy person. By no means. He starts PTing at like 5 o'clock in the morning still. So he's still working hard, but he plays golf twice a week and spends time with his boy. Like, that doesn't make them lazy. They just know what they want and the priorities. And I think living in Australia, like, it's okay to sometimes also be like, if that's what you want and you want to just smell the roses a little bit more, enjoy that, but you have to accept the other side of that as well. As long 100%. As you can accept the other side, then that's your decision and your life and your choice.
Yeah, that's exactly what I teach. Like, part of the reason why I studied a lot of ancient philosophy and things like that is that these people who have had stuff that's sitting around for thousands of years, like you look at Plato, Aristotle, Marcus Aurelius, there's heaps of them, Epictetus. You go back and you read their stuff, there's a reason why it's been around for 1, 2, plus thousand years. Because these people had insights into human behavior that we just gloss over and shit over these days. I tell people in my events, like, there's all these people out there that are like, follow your passions. And I'm like, do you even know what the word passion means? If you just Google the word passion and look up the etymology of the word, but the history of the word is the original meaning was to suffer. I'm like, cool, you go follow your passions, my friend.
Suffer.
Yeah. The reason why we suffer in our passions, and if you actually read Marcus Aurelius's book, he says, avoid the passions. He tells you to avoid passions because passions are an upsided side without realizing that there's negatives. When we get into an intimate relationship, just as an example, the reason why we have a relationship is because no one would love you for you unless you got to know you. Now, at first, when you're shopping, like, it's the same as you go and look at a house. The real estate agent's not going to go, oh yeah, the gutters are fucked and the roof's broken. They're not going to tell you that. They're going to highlight the good bits. Like, look at the
behind this cupboard, there's a hole, but don't worry about that.
Yeah, you're looking up at the roof, and they're like, yeah, but look at the carpets, how nice they are. They're going to. So when you start dating, you get home, you put on your favorite cologne, you get dressed up, all of that shit. You want to present yourself as the best possible version of yourself. So you start dating, and that's passion. So it's all like fun and it's exciting, and you see the person, you're like, fuck, they're amazing, because everything that they're telling you is they're telling you to look at I shouldn't say the carpet because that could come down wrong, right? But but they're highlighting. They're like, if you're a man and the woman's got big breasts, she's going to highlight her breasts and wear a push-up bra and things like that.
Social media highlight real life.
But if they've got, let's say they've got thicker calves, they're going to try and wear longer dresses. And same as dudes do exactly the same thing. Like, if you're buff, you're going to wear a muscle shirt and shit like that. If you're not, you're going to hide that a little bit, and you're going to share your personality as the kind person that you are, or how driven you are with work. So at first, what we do is we share our highlight reel. But when you start dating, you sit there and you think this person is amazing. Of course they are, because that's the highlight reel.
Give it 3 months.
Yeah, but now you move in, you start living with each other, and it's like, she didn't take out the fucking bins. I asked her to take out. Who's taking it? Oh, I bet. I've unpacked the dishwasher like 5 times this week, and they couldn't even take out the fucking bins. So you start to see their other side. Now she's leaving her shit around in the bathroom, and you're like, when I was single, I didn't have to worry about all this shit on the countertop. So we start to pick on these things. That's when people start falling apart in relationships, because they question the relationship because the passion's gone. But the passion was only the highlight reel. So when we get a job and we're passionate about the job, it's exciting. But we don't see all the downsides and the negatives. Entrepreneurship is sold like that all the time. I get all these dudes and girls in my inbox, and they're like, oh man, I'd love to start my own business and stuff. And I'm like, do you even fucking realize what you're saying? This shit's like saying, I want to have kids because it's going to be easy. What is wrong with you?
Sucks your soul.
Oh man, entrepreneurship is like, you wake up, you get the shit kicked out of you, and you go to bed. And hopefully by the end of the week, you raise your hand, you're like, I won. And then next week you get back in the ring and you get the shit kicked out of you again, and you take a couple of losses. Like, that's the game. But if, I've worked with heaps of martial artists over the years, and I've been quite involved in martial arts and things like that for a long time. I started boxing when I was really young. But in that field, people walk in and they think that it's going to be fun, enjoyable. It sucks. Everything hurts. You get your ass kicked. You go through periods of times where it just feels like nothing comes together. The people that love the sport will stay at it. The people that are passionate and have a fantasy, they're out. And that's why you have high churn rates of even gyms. People walk in, they're like, I want to lose weight. They think that they're going to feel better about themselves, but it fucking sucks. Like, how many times a month do you have where you're just like, I can't be fucked training, but you train anyway, or
every second day.
Yeah, it's right. It's super common. But you love training, right?
Yeah.
I love training.
And you know why you need to do it. Like, there's all those underlying things. It's funny that you mentioned martial arts. I did my first jiu-jitsu class on Wednesday night.
Sick, where at?
Aruda on Crossroad.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's really good, really good. But I'm fucked. Like, I was like, one of the guys in the gym, he's Brazilian, and he's like, you wait, your neck's going to be so sore. And I'm like, oh, I'm in pain, because like, it was just like heaps of like feet, like, more wrestling sort of style stuff. So the big 100-kilo guys just yanking on your neck and all this. And I'm like, I kind of fucking love it. Like, I was like, I'm kind of addicted. Like, but the expectation as well going into this. And I think it's my equation, like my happiness equation is like expectations versus reality equals happiness. Like, if your expectation is the reality, then you're content, you're happy, they're fine. My expectation going into that gym to do jiu-jitsu was I'm going to get the shit kicked out of me because I've got no idea what I'm doing. It's going to be really fucking hard cardio-wise. My cardio sucks. And what happened? Both of those things happened, but I'm okay with it because they were my expectations in the first place.
100%. That's love, though. So the reason why ancient philosophers separated the word love from the word passion is because when you're passionate about something, you see an upside without the downside. And you get excited about things easy. So people get excited about making money and then they realize like it's really fucking tough. And there's a reason why some people make a lot of money and people don't. So it's really tough. Having good kids is really tough. Now, it's not tough for people that love it because you're just like, yeah, it's parenting. But those people are more stable. When people are like, oh, I want to have a kid because it's like I've got this cute thing and they're just like, they're going to be like a perfect example of me. And then the next second you got your hand in shit. They're crying all the time. They've been sick for the 15th time this month. Like, that's tough. But people who love their kids, they're like, yeah, but they're kids. The same as entrepreneurs. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, my team comes to me like, oh, this customer's got this and that's fucking happening and there's not enough cash. And I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. Leave it with me. I'll fix it. And you just get on with it, right? It's just part of the game. So, yeah. It's also the reason why, like, if you look statistically at podcasts, I think the average podcast globally has less than 5 episodes.
Yeah, it's definitely. I remember because as soon as I hit, like, I even think like it's like only like maybe like instantly 10% drop off after 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's a huge. It's like then the other 99% drop off after like 10 or something like that.
Yep.
As soon as I hit that, I was like, beat you motherfuckers.
Yeah. Well, I think I can't remember what it is because I only saw the stats a couple of weeks ago because I know the guy who owns Podmatch, and he put out the stats for this year. And I can't remember what they were, but I was mind blown. It's like statistically, if you've done more than like 15 or 20 podcasts, I can't remember what the data was, but it was like so pathetic. You know, you're in the top like 5% globally. And, you know, I've got a podcast as well. And I think we're about to hit our 500th episode or something like that. And I'm just like, holy shit, we're in like the top 000. And it's like, I don't even try. I do, you know, a podcast a day, normally Monday to Friday, depending on the week. Some weeks I sort of skip some episodes and whatever. But it's not that hard to win in life if you think through what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think because people don't have clarity on what they want in life, they just bounce around and they try things and they're trying to figure it out. I think that's a really bad strategy. I mean, I have an event where I help people build their success map in life. And the reason why I did that was because I was fucking lost. And when you're lost, you keep trying things. When you try things, you waste time. Then when you waste time, you have a birthday and you're like, fuck, I'm fucking up in life. This isn't good. Then you put all this pressure on yourself and then you make dumb decisions. That's why people normally are pretty shit with their finances. You know, every year they look and they're like, I'm behind. So then they start rushing. Then they make stupid decisions. And then another year goes. Now you got a 45-year-old who's got no cash and they're broke. And that's a bad place to be because you start reacting.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like you've talked about there, obviously, like, so entrepreneurship is harder than probably people, especially on social media, putting out to be podcasting, all these sort of things. And that's why I really, as someone that, you know, I'm building my first tech product at the moment, going through that and starting a podcast, doing all this, it's like I'm trying to really hone out there that like show the truth behind it. Like I did a post the other day, like entrepreneurship, very lonely, sit at my desk for like 8 hours in the afternoon after PTing on my own, just being like, cool, this is not that interesting. Like it's, you know, and say with a podcast, like it's all, you know, it might look easy to get people, but like getting guests is hard. Once you've burnt through your initial little network, easy to do your first 5 to 10 because you're like, yeah, cool mates, do this and that. And then you're like, oh, fuck, like, how do I get people on? So and it's like anything, but being open up and like telling people about these things is so important because every man and their dog wants to start a business until they start the business and go, ew, that's not quite what I thought it was going to be.
100%. And then like, I tell this to my team and I've worked with heaps of sales teams because I guess like my specialty or my expertise is human performance. So I get the best out of people. I get a lot of people who message me and they're like, oh, I heard you're a business coach. I'm not a business coach. I work with people and I make people perform. But 80% of business problems or even 90% are people problems. You have staff not working effectively. It's a people problem. You've got leadership issues, people problem, management issue, people problem, sales problem, people problem, marketing, people problem. So a lot of it is the more you understand human behavior, the more you get people to work effectively. And then you've got systems and structure and strategy and stuff. I can help with that, but it's not strategy I'm good at and culture I'm good at. But when it's like the nitty gritty, putting process together, I fucking hate that shit. So I refer.
You probably still need, but you need that human psychology and behavior to get the buy-in for people to actually follow through with those things anyway.
100%. So it's like most people's issues are human behavior issues in business. But if you look at a relationship, that's a human behavior problem. You've got family problems, human behavior problem. And the external problems are always the same as the internal problems as well. So if you have someone who can't lead a team, they normally have self-leadership issues. It's really easy when you see how people react. You can tell everything about what's going on the inside. In fact, the guy that I grew this morning is an anxiety coach. And so he teaches people how not to have anxiety. But why do you think he's teaching people how not to have anxiety?
Because he's got it.
Because he's fucking anxious all the time. The dude's more anxious than anyone that I know about money. So, yeah, I don't even know how the fuck I got off track then. But anyway, I'll let you bring it back
that's good.
online.
But then, like I said, a lot of my audience is probably, in their 20s to 30s, or even still then their 30s to 40s, and they're still understanding where to go in life and things like this. Advice to people, early 20s, and they're like, I don't know really where to go. They know they are capable of achieving something great.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know exactly what that is. They don't know what the first steps are to take. What advice do you give to those people?
Do my Thrive Time event. And that's not promotion. It's you can try to figure it out, but good luck. Because it took me years to figure out the shit. And when I put together the basic framework of Thrive Time, I'd already spent over $1 million on personal development. So when people come to me and they're like, oh man, I've spent like a couple of grand doing a course and I've done some books and shit, I'm like, cool, keep going. And then when I look at a lot of my friends who have done really, really well in business, a lot of those friends who have done really, really well in business, if you ask them what they've invested on coaches, mentors, people who guide them on the journey, they've spent a lot of fucking money and a lot of time, because you need to be around experts in order to figure shit out. And you can take advice from anyone. But the thing is, like, are you getting the right advice for you at the right time? People come to me and they're a business owner and they're a startup business and they want to join. I've got a business program as well. And they'll want to join part of the business program. And we have a minimum of 300 grand revenue before they even get it, before they're allowed to come in. The reason why I do that is because if you're a startup business owner, what I'm going to teach you will not help you. Now, you might think that you're getting the fast track from someone who's built, over a 7-figure company. But it doesn't. It actually creates problems for you because you're going to compare yourself with them. You're going to be in a rush, and there's a lot of small micro problems. And when you've got a small business or you just started, it's not so much the business strategy that's a problem. It's you and the way you think, because you have to untune and undo all the shit that you've been taught. So a lot of people are taught, like, if I work hard, then I'm going to burn out. Do you know how hard it is to break that pattern? I don't believe in burnout anymore. I'm just like, I just work because I enjoy working. And if I want to have a break, I have a break, and then I'm going to go back to work. I go on holidays and I still work. And a lot of people will say to me, why do you work so much? Because it's what I love to do. Do you go to a professional athlete and tell an athlete that they shouldn't train when they're on holidays? We admire that and we look up to that. But people tell business owners all the time, why are you working when you're on holidays? It's because they get stressed from work. And so we have to break all those patterns as we start to build ourselves as business owners. A lot of those psychological changes need to happen. But anyway, when it comes to that of my Thrive Time event, there's 3 key pillars. The first one is you have to find out what fulfills you. So if you're not clear on fulfillment, now I'm not talking about happiness, because if you go back and you study Confucius, he said that the source of unhappiness is chasing happiness. I don't believe in happiness. I'm not happy. Like, I'm not happy to be here, but I'm not unhappy either. Like, I'm not miserable. Emotions are a really bad driver in life. They're essentially a feedback mechanism that's like the red dash light. Sometimes people allow their emotions to guide their behavior, but essentially it's a dash light that's coming on going, just check something here. So for instance, if someone walks into a room and they're unsure and they start thinking about what people are going to think about them, the dash light comes on and all of a sudden they start getting a bit of anxiety and they're like, fuck, I feel really uncomfortable being here. That's the dash light saying, hey, there's something that's not working here. That doesn't mean that there's a real problem. It means that you just got to check something. So like, I've worked with people who have social anxiety. I ask them, what makes you think that you shouldn't have it? You're going into a new environment, different people, those fears are going to come up. And when I tell them that, they're like, oh, I never thought about it like that, because I've been taught that having that anxiety is a bad thing. If I'm not anxious before I get on stage speaking in front of large groups of people, like I walk into a room with 20 people, it doesn't really bother me. It used to scare the shit out of me. Now I get on stage in front of 300 people. Man, the heart's beating a little bit, the sweat's cranking under the armpits, and I'm like, fuck, what if I fuck up? And so I have those, but it keeps me dialed in. So I want to have that. I know that if I'm not dialed in and I don't have that little bit of anxiousness there, I'm probably just not on point. So I want to have it. I think that it's a benefit. What we want to do is we want to find what fulfills us. And the pillar of fulfillment really comes from being balanced about what you want. So I'm fulfilled when I work. But when I work, it sucks and it's challenging. But I enjoy that challenge. So it's the balance point of both a positive and a negative create fulfillment. Just like love. A parent who loves their kids, if you ask them and you say, do you love your kids? And they go, yep. And I go, are your kids your dream and your nightmare at the same time? They go, fuck yeah. That's love. The difference between love and passion is an upside without the downside. So it's like, passion is like, oh, they're the most amazing person. They do all this all the time. Like they're the greatest thing ever. Yeah, we'll see, motherfucker.
It's that rush, that short term.
It is. And so people start a business and they're like, you know what? My passion is to have a business and to go out and coach people. And I'm like, have you ever coached people? You know how fucking draining it is to listen to people's problems all the time? You have to work through your own shit so you don't get drained. You know, I depending on the week, sometimes I can work with like 20 or 30 people a week. And I get asked, like, does your energy drop? No, not at all. Because I work through my own shit. So I just see, I'm just doing a job. I'm just there. My job is to help get an outcome. We work through stuff and we're good. The word empathy means to suffer with others. It comes from the root word of compassion. And the reason why when people are compassionate or empathetic, they suffer, it's because when someone has an emotional response and you have a past wound that you haven't worked through, you react to their shit. So when someone's complaining and you're getting sucked into their story, they're going to suck your energy out.
Yeah.
When someone complains, I stop and I'm like, cool, what's the outcome we're trying to get to? What's the specific problem that we're dealing with? And then let's work through this shit to get to an outcome. Yeah. If you want to complain about it, go to your friends, go to your family. They'll accept that shit. I don't. That might be harsh, but it's not really. It actually helps them. So pillar one is we want to get fulfillment. Fulfillment comes from love. When you love to do something, you're going to go through the suffering. You're going to endure the adversities. The adversities is going to build the character so you become a better person. The more that you become a better person, the more you're going to achieve. The more you achieve, the more confidence and courage you have. The more confidence and courage you have, the more adversities you're going to take on. And bingo, now we're growing. So it's a cycle. You have to enjoy that part because you're going to stick at it for a long time, right? If we're going to do something short term, probably not going to work well. You know, if you want to make a lot of money, you make it over a long period of time. You want to have a great relationship, you build it over a long period of time. So we have to be committed for a long time. If it's exciting and fun and you don't see the downsides, you're going to do it for a short time and then give up. That's a bad strategy for long-term success. So we've got to find out what fulfills us. Then the next thing is we've got to find out the direction. So we've got to know our mission. We've got to set goals effectively. And then we work towards them. When you do that, you'll be driven consistently. So now we're fulfilled and driven. What do you reckon happens with a person who's fulfilled and driven? We're fucking winning, right? Then we have to ask ourselves, what's the shit that gets in the way of that? Emotions. So we need to be more emotionally stable. So I've got emotional stability tools in order to balance out the way we think. And then we have to be able to use our positive and negatively charged emotions. Positive emotions, I think most of the time, bullshit in the way that they're sold because people think that they're supposed to be happy and positive all the time. How many times have you gone to the gym because you're fucked off and pissed off because you ate a pizza and now you're pissed at yourself and now you're at the gym like crushing the best workout of the week?
Yeah, quite a few times.
Yeah, right?
Best sessions ever as well.
100%, right? You know, the best training sessions come from us being pissed off and angry and frustrated. The problem with my industry is that we over-exaggerate these like positive emotions and being happy all the time and fucking joy and all that shit. And I'm like, the greatest gym sessions I've ever had is where I'm pissed off. You ask someone when they've ever had their best fitness or best health. Most dudes especially, it's after a relationship breakup.
Yeah.
You want to get a dude jacked and fit?
It's right
go
now.
through a breakup, yeah. And so I don't over-exaggerate positive emotions. Yeah. They can be used, but they're a tool. And so what I teach a lot of the time is like with our mental and emotional, the way that we use our mind and our emotions and the way that mental and emotional tools need to be developed is that you have a steering wheel in a car, a brake and accelerator. Dipshits get in a car, they put the foot flat on the floor, they go flat out in a straight line, they go, man, I'm going fast, and the next second they run off the end of the track and fucking crash. The good drivers, they know how to brake, they know how to accelerate. They can accelerate just ever so slightly and get a couple of seconds off. Then they brake and they might brake really, really hard and then back off a little bit, just a little bit on the brake, and they know how to use it. If anyone's doing anything with mental and emotional tools or you're working, you know, with a coach or whatever, you have to know how to use both the accelerator and the brake. Just like you need to know how to use your negative emotions, you need to know how to use your positive emotions, and you need to know how to balance shit out so that you don't over-occupy your mind and just overthink.
So do you prefer then potentially say the word being content rather than happy? Because it's like, this is my situation. I'm accepting of that. I will lean into whatever emotion is at play currently. Let's go. Like it's not overcooking and trying to force that emotion. Say you are feeling sad. It's not trying to be like, I now want to be happy, or vice versa. Like, it's probably not the best thing in the world to be like, I'm happy. Oh, happiness was not the goal. I want to be in pain right now. Like, it's just tapping into what you're feeling currently and how that's going to impact your workflow as well.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It takes me ages to explain this in my event because most people have been driven from a young age. Like when we're a child, there's different parts of the brain that govern the way we behave. And there's something called impulses and instincts, right? So with our impulses, we're impulsive towards things that give us pleasure. But the problem is that things that give us pleasure normally lead straight back to pain. And so most people when we grow, well, really everybody, every child when we grow up is driven towards shit that we're impulsive towards. So a child, if you just give it chocolate, will just keep eating chocolate. But then anything that gives it pain or fear, it'll avoid. Now, they've even found this in biology. With single cell bacteria, it'll still move away from a toxin and it'll move towards things that it perceives will enhance the quality of its life. So with humans and a child, when a child's young, it will avoid things that it's scared of or make it afraid. And some of that comes through genetics, some of it comes through epigenetics. Also, it watches how the parent behaves. So if a parent is anxious in social settings, the child may become anxious in social settings. Dogs are the same, pets are the same as well in some cases. So the child grows up using its emotions to try to regulate itself based on the external environment. The problem with that is that all pleasure leads to pain, and pain leads us back to seeking pleasure. So when we're unhappy, we want to be when we're unhappy, we want happiness. But when we get happiness, we tend to fear unhappiness again, which makes us unhappy in the moments that we fear unhappiness, right? So we end up in this pendulum swing of emotions. You know, if we've had a busy week, we're like, oh man, I've worked hard. But after people work hard, what do they normally do on Friday, Saturday, Sunday? They blast themselves to bits with all these self-destructive behaviors. I was speaking recently on a podcast and I said, you know, it's crazy that people want 4-day work weeks. If you think about this, Monday to Friday, most people are pretty regulated, and you'll see this as a PT, right? People normally Monday morning, they're up, they're at the gym, they're exercising. Friday comes, where the fuck are they? They're not at the gym. They're going out, they're eating their snitty for dinner, they've had a beer, they've gone out for lunch drinks, and then the weekend comes, they're at the footy, chugging beers. And so Sunday comes, what the 3 days that they call celebrating, they've essentially gone broke because they've burned all their cash. They got fat because they've been eating shit food. They've blown their brain to bits with alcohol, and now they're ready for the week again because they've just had their pleasure, which has now led to pain, and now they got to work it all off. So anyway, all emotions are cyclical, right? So they swing back and forward. Anytime we're in pain, we'll seek pleasure, and anytime we have pleasure, we go back to pain. I teach that that's not the goal of life. The goal of life is to find out what fulfills us, and fulfillment is balanced. So doing this podcast, there are other things that you could be doing, right? So there's a pain attached to doing this podcast. You've got a guest here. The guest is different. You have to adapt all the time. You could be out making money doing an extra PT session for that hour. So it comes with consequences. Every decision that we make has a consequence. There's a consequence to being in a relationship. There's a consequence to not being in a relationship. There's a consequence to eating pizza. There's a consequence to not eating pizza. You have to decide the negative aspects of the positives that you have within your own life. And so when we do what we love, when you're clear about what fulfills you and what you love, you go, you know what? Because I love doing it, I'm going to fucking do it anyway, because that's what I enjoy. I enjoy the adversity of the thing that I'm working towards.
And it's worth it.
Yeah. I've been going to the gym since I was 13, right? And I'm 40 now. To me, people ask me all the time, like, how do you just stay consistent with going to the gym? Because I fucking love going to the gym. Do I have days where I miss? Yeah. Do I not want to train some days? All the time. Do I have days where I have wicked workouts? Yeah. Do I have other days where they're dog shit workouts? Yeah. Does that mean that I'm going to change and adapt my behavior based on how I feel tomorrow? Fuck no. I'm going back to the gym and we're getting it done. When you're a business owner, same thing. Just because you feel sad or just because you're upset or just because you're stressed, if it's what you love, you'll just get back in the game and you'll keep going. And this is the difference between why some people end up at the top of their field and why most don't. Because the people who end up at the top of their field really actually love what they do. And it has a lot to do with their value structure. You know, I can go deep into that. Every human being has a purpose. Everything in nature has a purpose. So if we understand our purpose, we understand our values, we understand our mission, we understand our visions, we document our goals, and we work towards those things, we tend to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And it's a process. Like I said, the work itself is the enjoyment. So I enjoy doing this podcast because I know that I become a better communicator every podcast that I do. Is every podcast great? Fuck no. I look back all the time and I'm like, man, that was so bad. But I reflect back on it and I try to get better. If I go back to podcasts 5 or 6 years ago, they were horrible, disgusting. But I had to go through that.
But if you don't look back and see and think that way, then you started too late, or you're not improving.
100%.
And so then you're going, well, fuck, that's also a problem. Now I need to fix that.
Yeah. So it's like we need to be everything that grows because it goes through adversity. Like you have to have stress for growth. One of my famous quotes that gets around the place a bit is that trees grow the deepest roots in the harshest droughts. So if you want to be something that's strong and can handle adversity and can handle challenge, you have to grow those deep roots. Now that does not come from superficial work. It comes from diving deep. Like the greatest growth normally happens through painful times where you have self-reflection. Without that, most people are pretty fucking dumb. And having worked with tens of thousands of people, I speak to people all the time, right? Like I'll have a business owner that speaks to me 3 years ago and I'm like, bro, your business is fucking bad. You need help. Come and do my event. Oh man, but I don't have the money and I don't have the time. I'm like, you got the money for a new Hilux, but you don't have the money to invest on a coach to grow your business.
Priorities.
I know your priorities, bro. Like we're good. You go do you, I'll go do me. And then, I see them and I've had plenty of people that reach out and I'm like, I see them 2 weeks later. They're like, oh man, check out my new jet ski. And I'm like, cool. So you could invest, a couple of grand in coaching or, even tens of thousands in coaching. But at the same time, you can invest in a new jet ski and your Hilux. Okay, cool. 3 years later, they reach out. How's everything going? Oh man, you would not believe what happened. I'm like, I wouldn't believe it. Really, tell me what happened. Oh man, the missus left. She took the fucking kids. Now I'm going through court. The business is fucked. I had massive staff turnover. I went from like 20 staff down to 10. I'm like, okay. So why are you reaching out now? Oh man, I need a coach. I'm like, cool. So adversity taught you what you needed to learn, hey?
Yeah.
Bit of self-reflection, bit of self-time, and a shitload of pain. Welcome to the journey now.
That's that
You have to go through it.
Short-term pleasure breeds genuine pain.
100%.
Like it's, if you're, the jet ski was his short-term pleasure, his Hilux. It's cool.
Yep.
But he had to deal with the consequences. And I think that's that really important aspect. I'd even talk about this with my mates a lot, obviously. Like in your 20s, you're surrounded by a variety of different people. Some people are on that pursuit of very similar to myself. Some people are not quite so much. So it's really hard to navigate that a little bit as well. And I imagine a lot of people listening would feel very similar. And so it's having that conversation. And even because it's not just because someone in your group isn't like that currently, doesn't mean they don't want to be. They just may be unaware. And then you bring that awareness to your friends because you can always uplift them before you kind of be like, I need to shed some time with you as well.
100%.
Does money make you happy?
Money just makes you more of what you are. It's that simple, right? It's an amplifier. Nothing external changes the way you feel about things internally. Too many people get caught up trying to change the external world when the real problem is the internal world. Part of the reason why I studied a lot of philosophy and also a lot of science, because I really wanted to figure out, I read a lot of psychological research and I go, okay, based on psychology, I want to understand how our brain works to give us the perceptions that we have and why, there's a lot of people out there who talk about beliefs and so on, but I wanted to know what creates a belief. And then you start finding out things like a lot of beliefs are created from the meanings that we attach to things. So I could sit here and say, you're this type of person, but it's a belief that I have. How did I come up with that? Then it has to do with the meanings that we attach to things. It has a lot to do with genetics, epigenetics. Then there are other factors as well. So there's our perceptions as a young child. Then you start putting in neurochemical changes or hormonal changes. So you start learning a lot about how people operate. But it really comes down to a simple principle that's been around for thousands of years, and that is that the external world is just a mirror to ourselves. And so if we see things as a mirror to ourselves, it makes life a lot easier to navigate. If I'm pissed off and frustrated all the time, what am I pissed off about? We all know this. You get in the car, you're running late. What happens on the trip when you're running late, right? We perceive we get every traffic light. Some motherfucker cuts us off. We're angry. But my question is, are you normally an angry person? Because if you're an angry person, Running late all the time just makes you more of what you are. It's just making you more aware. You're really an angry person. You need to deal with your fucking anger issues, right? I was that guy. That's why I know that pattern well, right?
You're like, sounds like someone I know.
Yeah. So like I used to be a really angry person that couldn't control my anger and my aggression. Hence why I got a broken nose and, porcelain veneers because I had my teeth smashed. I got bottled in the side of the head. Like
Pain makes you understand that.
totally, right? I was an idiot, but I used anger as my emotional home, and all humans have an emotional home. Some people just naturally get sad all the time. Some people get angry all the time. Some people get anxious all the time. Some people are stressed out all the time. But we have these emotional homes that we go back to, and it's part of our personality or our identity that we keep. And so we try to stay consistent with our identity and so on. And so really the external world just shows us who we are. We can say that we're pissed off all the time, but the truth is you're just a person who's pissed off all the time. And if you don't deal with that, changing the external world won't make you pissed off because you'll find more ways to get pissed off. Just like angry people find more ways to get angry. If they're not angry about the fucking dog that shat out the back or the dog that's running around the house, or if it's not their wife or if it's not their husband, they're angry people. Now, anger is an emotion. It's something that they can manage and it's something that they can deal with, just like depression, just like anxiety. And people debate me on this and they're like, yeah, but you don't understand. I have an anxiety disorder. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk through it. If we have a look, what tends to create our feelings? It's the emotions. What is an emotion? Now go and do your research on what emotion is. It's essentially neurochemical changes or chemical changes in the body. We're changing our hormones or our chemical sequencing in our body. Now, then we label those feelings with certain things. And there's plenty of data that's coming out about this right now because kids are getting labeled with these fucking ridiculous labels. So there's like, now there's something where there's a label where like you can have social anxiety. But what is social anxiety? It's the fear of being around people. Now, why would you fear being around people? You don't actually fear people. You fear the judgments or the criticisms from those people. Can you deal with your fear around criticism and judgment? Of course you can. You become more confident in who you are as a person. You learn more about yourself. You realize that judgments and criticisms from others can't actually hurt you. It's your fear about the judgment and criticisms of others. So it all has to do with you. But now there's a new anxiety that's been put on the register, which is people that don't like to order food. They get anxious ordering food. So now that's an anxiety disorder. Man, have you ever gone out and just been stressed out and not wanted to order food? And sometimes you look at the menu and like, fuck, I don't know what to order. Well, now you can be diagnosed with a disorder for that. I'm very highly critical of that because if you go back through history and also if you have a look at, there's I know I'm going to go way off track here and my brain's like jumping around and bouncing around. But if you have a look at certain cultures and certain populations, they don't have the same disorders as other countries. People who have, like, I'll give you an example. A child who is brought up in an environment with low levels of stress and low levels of adversity tends to become really weak as an adult because they're not used to dealing with challenge. Kids who tend to grow up with a lot of challenge and a lot of adversity tend to become entrepreneurial or they become high achievers or high performers, whether it's in sport, because they're used to dealing with adversity and normally adversity leads to achievement. So there seems to be this balance in life of adversity, and that adversity really creates our own self-growth. If we don't go through adversity, we just don't grow. But now what happens is people getting diagnosed with all these different disorders, and I'm coming back to the money thing. I know I went way off track again. We're off on a different fucking path.
That's what podcast thing's great. You go wherever.
I was going to say, people are going to listen to this, they're like, was this guy high? No, I wasn't. But
on life, that's about it.
Yeah. So if we want to grow, it's all really an internal job. Like whether someone claims to have disorders and so on. I got told at school that I had ADHD. I was put into special classes. I was told I had learning difficulties. When people come to me and they say I got ADHD, I'm like, get in line, motherfucker. So is almost every entrepreneur that I work with. What do you want to do? Right? You want to sit around and talk about your ADHD and go to a therapy, or you want to go out and start a business or work really hard towards something? Now, if you have a look at the diagnoses of ADHD, they have hyper-focus. So they're actually hyper-focused on the things that they enjoy. That doesn't seem like an attention deficit disorder. It seems like people try to force you to do shit that you don't want to do, and then you get pissed off and frustrated, and because of that, you can't sit still because you want to go and do something that actually inspires you. I think that it's a gift. If you ask my wife, I have people in my events, and they'll say this. They'll go, well, but you've learned to deal with your ADHD and like you're adaptable and all that stuff. And I say, Jess, if I don't want to do something, what happens? And she's like, you don't do it. And I'm like, exactly. I don't do it. Just like when I was at school, when I was forced to sit in math class, I don't fucking do it because that's not the thing that I hyper focus on. But I'm hyper focused on things that make me thrive in life. And that's essentially what ADHD is that people who have ADHD in most cases are hyper reactive to trying to fit into someone else's agenda. Just don't do that. Find out what fulfills you and go out and do it. But coming back to your question, does money make you happy? No, it doesn't. It just amplifies everything. Just like everything outside of you amplifies everything, right? If you're a stress head, you just get more stressed. If you're anxious, you'll be more anxious. Money just makes more of everything. But if you enjoy life and you enjoy what you've got, money makes more of that. And I get people who come up to me all the time because obviously I've got supercars and stuff. They're like, man, I would love to have a supercar. I'm like, really? Why? And they're like, oh, it's just fucking cool. And most of the time it's because they think that they're going to get some form of validation from others. Here's the thing. You drive around a supercar, people tell you that you're a rich prick. They go, oh, man, you park a supercar in a normal car park. My car is almost the same width as a truck. Now, if I parked a truck in 2 fucking lanes in a car park, you'd go, oh, it's a truck. I understand why. But I park my supercar and the doors go outwards. I literally park it in a normal car park. I can't get out the fucking car. And then people are like, well, then you shouldn't have a fucking supercar. Yeah. So you got to deal with all these fuckwits that have never had a supercar and don't understand anything about them. Hence the reason why most people with supercars park them weird, because they're really hard to get in and out of. They've got big, long doors. Mine's been lowered, so pretty much I drive anywhere. I've got to watch for bumps, speed humps, everything like that. You've got to be careful. I park at places and I watch people, like I've come out before on one of my cars. There have been handprints on the bonnet and I'm like, the fuck? Like there's probably some Instagrammer who's been like leaning with her ass out on the bottom of my car. Yeah, like on the bottom of my car. I'm like, man, I'm going to kick the shit out of that person. Like I've been at car events before and little kids come up and they like, their parents will go to take photos and they lean against the car. And I'm like, fuck man, the paint job on it. Like I think the paint that I have on my McLaren is a special customized McLaren paint. It's an MSO option. And I think from memory, it's like $6,000 for 500 mils. So if they scratch the car, like say goodbye to your $6,000, my friend. So, you know, all the kid's got to be doing is just wearing jeans and have a little stud on the back and bang, there goes my paintwork. So it's things like that people aren't aware of. Like they are extremely challenging. But the thing is, they're fucking cool as well. And I love cars. Like my dad builds custom cars. But then I also go places and it makes people weird. I go to car shows all the time or car events. And like I'll let little kids sit in my car and all that. Like it's there for people to enjoy. That's why I love people. I love being around people and I love inspiring people.
The next generation.
Yeah. So like if some young guy comes up people always come up and they want to talk. I always give my time unless I'm busy. Like I've had people come up before and they're like, oh, can my kid sit in the car? And I'm like, I've literally just got out the car and I'm running 15 minutes late for a meeting. And I'm like, look, sorry, man, I got to go. And I walk off and I'm like, I know they think that I'm a prick. But the thing is that like, I'm just in the middle of a meeting. Some people don't understand that, but you got to deal with that shit as well. Most of the time I'm pretty good because I realize that it inspires people, but it comes with a cost. And there's, like I said before, there's always a cost to every decision you make. If you want to make more money, it comes with a cost. Life doesn't get easy because you have more money. It gets easier and harder at the same time. Just like life with a little bit of money gets easy and hard. Would I love to just sit around sometimes and just do sweet fuck all and just watch TV for a week or two? Would I love to take 4 weeks off a year and just go on a holiday and just chill the fuck out and not care? Yeah, of course I would. But that's not what I really love to do. What I love to do is we went for 3.5 weeks, which was our first holiday, I think, in 2 years. And then before that was another 2 years prior to that. So we went to Singapore, then we went to Bali, and in Bali we stayed in a couple of different places. But when we were there, I worked every day. Every day I'd open up my laptop, I'd do my podcast in the morning, I'd go to the gym. My life doesn't change because I travel. Whereas people who don't have those responsibilities, their life changes when they travel. So they're like, oh, I'm on holidays, I don't give a fuck anymore. I have to give a fuck because I'm a business owner, right? Like having young kids, you don't get to go on a holiday and not give a fuck about the kids because they'll die. I don't not get to go on a holiday and, you know. So, yeah, in answer to your question, money just amplifies everything. It just makes you more of who you are. If you're a stress head without it, you're more stressed. And a lot of business owners are fucking stressed about money. But they've always been stressed about money. It's a mental game. It's
an
internal game.
I wanted to kind of draw back on, because this is a point I've talked with other people about before. I've seen on some of your socials as well, and the labeling of some of these disorders, let's call them.
Yep.
Anxiety, depression, learning difficulties, the ADHD or ADD, whatever, all these sort of things. Now, I have an issue when people label themselves as those things, not because I don't believe they exist. I 100% believe that, our medical system, as much as it has its many faults, like there's ways that we have accepted and we're learning more about the brain and how it works. So like anyone I think that stands up here and say depression's not real, I'm like, I disagree. But when someone says, I have anxiety, I'm like, why do you have anxiety? To your point, oh, well, whenever I go to talk with a girl, I get really anxious. I'm like, that's not anxiety. You're feeling anxious.
Yes.
That is in this present moment, you have a feeling of anxiousness. That doesn't mean you have anxiety. Much like if you're having a really shit week and you're like, I'm depressed. Like, you're not depressed. You're going through a stage where you're very sad. Maybe you have a feeling of depression, but that doesn't diagnose you with depression, much like ADHD. And I think then these things, if we label ourselves as these things or people run around and do it, it takes away from the people that actually have these disorders as well. Yeah. Like ADHD, real thing. Every man and their dog thinks they have ADHD. I'm like, just because you scroll TikTok all day and your brain's mushed doesn't mean you have ADHD.
Well, but it does though these days, because you can get diagnosed with that because of that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And so, so maybe then the system is over diagnosing as well, because, but there's people that genuinely have these things, and then there's people that just waltz around and throw a label on their face, because what that also does is it creates an excuse for you. It gives you, it's that victim mindset. It gives you that reason as to why you're not achieving what you want to achieve. Oh, I can't do this because I'm ADHD and I can't sit still and concentrate. Okay. Let's say even you get diagnosed with it. You still have to go through life with that then.
Yeah.
So learn to live with it, learn to work through it. And it's like, so yeah, that I think it's a risk labeling it because it takes away from those with it. And it also limits yourself. You're putting limiting beliefs on what you are capable of achieving, which is very dangerous.
I think with that sort of stuff, something that I really like to do is, I like to question things and learn and try to figure stuff out. That's what's made me extremely good in this field. And we get a lot of medical professionals come to my event, which is crazy considering that I'm teaching a lot about mindset and human performance, and I've never gone to uni. But then I have a lot of uni people coming and doing my events and going, shit, I never thought about things this way. Now, they're a lot more open-minded and things like that, which I find really fascinating because I get attacked online and people are like, well, this guy's got no fucking certification. I'm like, man, look at you. You got a certification. Your life's fucked. Shut up. You take it however you want, but, like a piece of paper doesn't make you anything really. We all know someone who works in finance who's broke, right? There are thousands of people every year who exit uni with a business degree who will never run a business in their whole entire fucking life. Yet they'll give business advice to people. You take it how you want, right? Like, we're responsible for our lives and we're responsible who we listen to. Like, you don't even have to listen to me. I couldn't give a fuck. Like, it's your life. But you have to go through life navigating your own life and living it how you want to live. And I tell people this as well, like at my events. The Greeks said you need to know thyself and be thyself. People say if you can summarize your work, it's that. I help people to know themselves and be themselves. I don't care whether you listen to me. I don't care what you do. Like, what you do is what you do. What I care about is how I live. And I have people all the time come to me and they're like, yeah, but you should do this. And I'm like, you should shut the fuck up and leave me alone because I'm doing what I enjoy. You do what you enjoy. If you want to work with me, then we can come together and we work together. What I used to do was I used to stop and adapt for other people. But every time you stop and adapt, you become what they want and not what you want. And so now I just go, look, if you want to come with me on the journey, come along, sit in the passenger seat, let's fucking go. And we can align. But what I don't do is I don't stop and I don't change for people, because when you do that, then you give up more of yourself, and that's why people get lost. When we come to the labels, so I'll ask people these questions. They come in and they say, people that I've worked with, and there's a lot of them, they'll say, I have anxiety. And I say, what does that mean? And they say, well, I feel anxious. And I go, okay, so you feel anxious. When do you feel anxious? And they go, well, I'm anxious when, for instance, when I'm in a social setting. And I go, okay, cool. When you say a social setting, are we talking always, or are we just talking specific times? Go to moments. Now, what unfortunately most people don't know is that the brain tends to generalize. So if I ask someone how your day was, that's a 24-hour period. Now, if you have a look at, I think per day, I can probably figure this out on my phone. I can't remember the exact amount of seconds in a day, think is 18,000 or something like that, 18,300 or something. Let's have a look.
No, I think it's around that.
But anyway,
I think I've seen a quote on this sort of thing as well, which is, I assume, it's going down the pathway you're going, but I'll let you roll with it.
So it's 3,600 minutes. I think that's correct. It's 21,600. I don't even know if I worked that out right. But anyway, you get the point. Idea, I'm not a fucking mathematician. I'm human behavior. But anyway, let's say we've got 18,000, is it minutes? I can't even remember. Anyway, minutes, seconds, whatever. Every second, our brain is taking in information. It's essentially like those old movies, which are still snapshots. When someone says, I had a good day, what makes those 18,000 or whatever seconds, what makes it good?
It's probably that 51% was better than the 49% sort of thing. Well, the perception of that, isn't it?
There's a lot of shit that happens during a day. How can you generalize that your day is good? But we do that because it creates just a general communication. So if I come up and I go, how's your week going? Yeah, it's good. How's business going? Yeah, it's good. The fuck does good mean?
Also, some people are just like, I can't be asked talking about it.
Yeah, because we're not going to sit here and you're like, and we've all had conversations with people who are highly analytical and detailed. You're like, how's your week been? They're like, well, Monday morning I got out of bed and you're just like, oh my fuck, I'm out of here. Like I'm gone. So we tend to generalize as humans. And so we create these generalizations. So you'll say that person is this way. That person isn't that way. It's just your perception of them in certain moments is that way. So therefore now you label them as such. So when you understand that the brain is essentially snapshots and then we generalize things, nothing is good or bad. It's just moments. So when someone comes to me and they say, I have anxiety or I have an anxiety disorder, I go, when specifically? And they go, well, all the time. And I'm like, bullshit. When you sleep? Well, no, not when I sleep. And I'll start bringing up times where I'm 100% sure that they don't. Okay, you're anxious when you're brushing your teeth. Well, not most of the time. You're anxious when you're having a shit. Well, no. And I'm like, and after a while, you slowly chip away at that story. And then they'll sit there and they're like, okay, well, I'm anxious some of the time. And I'm like, okay, good. Now, specifically, when do you get anxious? When I'm around people. Okay, who specifically? Oh, anyone, including your mum? Well, no, not my mum. And then I chip away at that. And then eventually you're like, okay. And I have this when people come to me with public speaking issues. And I go, so you've got an issue with public speaking? Yep. Okay. What about 3-year-olds? If I had a room full of 3-year-olds, could you stand up in front of them and talk to them? Yeah, of course I could. Okay, well, what about 8-year-olds? Yeah, no, I'm all right with 8-year-olds. Okay, what about 16-year-olds? Oh, yeah, now I'm getting a bit anxious. Yeah. That's what it is, right? So they essentially have they are worried about the judgment of others, which then now creates anxiety. And now they call that an anxiety disorder when they're public speaking or when they're around people. So the problem with a lot of the mental health industry and the psychology industry, psychiatry industry, is they allow people to generalize their life instead of holding them accountable for moments of time and then figuring out what those moments are and what they mean and then giving them the tools to work on that.
Yeah.
So I have plenty of people who come to me and they'll say, and I've worked with, you can go online and see some testimonials and shit with people that I've worked with PTSD. And I try not to work with these cases. Like I tell people, if you're depressed, if you're suicidal, don't call me, just go to a fucking professional and do that shit. I help people to perform better. That's what I do. But I have those people sneak into my events. Like I've had suicide calls like in the middle of the fucking night. Well, not night, but like late Sunday afternoon, 7 o'clock at night, I'm sitting there watching TV and one of my clients calls me and he's like, I got a friend who's going to kill himself. And I'm like, fuck, what do you want me to do? And he goes, well, I want you to help him. And I said, oh, just get him to call a helpline or call the cops or whatever. He said, mate, he won't talk to anyone. He's one of those like pig-headed entrepreneurial guys, won't talk to anyone, but I know he'll talk to you because you'll just cut through the bullshit with him. Man, that was like a call until 11 o'clock at night. And he's still here, man. He's running a business and he's crushing it now. But and he was a client of mine for a while. But when someone comes along and they're like, I've got depression, I'm like, what does that mean? Because that's the problem is we don't ask what it means. And you go, okay, what does that mean? And they're like, I'm depressed. And I go, what does I'm depressed mean? And they go, well, it means I'm depressed. And I go, when? And they go, all the time. And I go, all the time. And then I start breaking it down again. And then eventually they're like, okay, so here's what happened. I'm depressed because I'm not where I want to be in life. And I go, okay, cool. Well, now how do we get you to where you want to be in life? And then from there we can start working on that and we can help that person. Now, some people have been conditioned, right? Like we get conditioned of shit all the time. When I worked in the health industry many, many years ago, when I was a PT and then I worked in a medical center, saturated fats were demonized, and the whole industry would go, saturated fats will kill you. Now, everyone's like, fucking use coconut oil for everything, right? Saturated fats. So a lot of the time, people just reinforce things that they hear instead of actually thinking through it. So there's probably going to be a heap of people who listen to this now who hate what I'm saying. That's cool. I'm sure in like 10 to 20 years, we'll figure out that things like depression have been overused, overdiagnosed, and that most of it's bullshit. But in saying that, are there things where people can be depressed and have it as an issue? Yeah, head traumas, right? For example, you'll see this in the gym industry, right? Like everyone's like, I'm on TRT, and they're fucking juiced to the eyeballs, and you're like, TRT, hey? Like testosterone replaced
like it might be trend.
Yeah. Like
something's telling me.
Cool. And then, and the same thing, like you get all these people, they're like, I'm so depressed. I'm like, you think it could be from the fucking massive amounts of cocaine that you've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years?
No.
It's definitely not the coke problem or the alcohol that you're drinking on the weekend. But what my point is like with a lot of this stuff, if you just sit down with people and you ask them, what does it mean? A lot of the time you'll find that things like depression, when most people are depressed, it's because they're not meeting their own expectations in life. When I talk to someone, they're like, I'm so depressed. And I go, well, why? And we really knuckle it down. They're like, you know what? I just thought by the age of 40, I would be more financially stable. And I'm like, okay, well, why aren't you there? Let's work through that. Now let's create a game plan and let's get you there. But you have to break those fantasies and the delusions. And there's enough data out there now to show that things like social media are making people more depressed. Why? Because there's a comparative between where you think you should be, who you think you should be, and how you should act and behave. And you're projecting that onto yourself. And then you project it onto the world, and then you can never live up to that expectation. Now you're fucked. So anytime Dr. John Demartini, who's a close friend of mine, he said, anytime that you pedestal something in life, you put yourself down. So if I look up to the dude in the gym who's jacked to the eyeballs and cranked on gear, I look up to that guy and I'm like, fuck, I wish I was that guy. But I'm not there. And then I look in the mirror and I've got a bit of a flat belly and some arms and I'm like, yeah, man, but I'm fucking, look at me, how skinny I am.
It's like, yeah, but.
Yeah, you're putting yourself down. That putting you down, when you put yourself down, the word depress means down. So it means to push down. So when you're depressed a lot of the time, for most people, not all the time, a lot of the time it's a self-comparative to yourself and others, or yourself and a situation and how you think things should be. But then, like I said, there is always exceptions to the rules and things like that. That's why we have to investigate these things instead of just throwing these shitty labels out there that everyone seems to have these days. And I think it's also because when you don't have something that you're working towards hard in life where you have an identity for your achievements, if you're not achieving, you need to still have an identity so you can identify as something with a label. So, that's my perspective. But like, and actually that's a lot of the research that's coming out now as well. There's a lot more coming out about this stuff. But I mean, there are things like head traumas and stuff like that can make people seriously depressed. There's enough data out there to show that now and enough research. The same as like people can have low testosterone. Like if you're a young male and you get kicked in the balls really, really hard, it can, because of what testosterone has a lot to do with the testes and everything like that. If your body can't produce it, then of course you're going to be low testosterone. But there's a lot of guys who are cranking gear as well, who are like, man, I'm TRT and low testosterone, when really they're just cranking heaps of gear.
You're just smashing the needles, brother.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we just got to be careful with a lot of those labels and shit as well, because people are using them for... But I think the important part out of this whole section is our brain will generalize moments in time. And if we don't get to the bottom of those generalizations, we think that things are the way that they are without realizing that it's just a generalization. There's no such thing as a good day. There are moments of the day that make your day good that you hyper-focus on. Just like if you hyper-focus on negative shit in your day will be a shit day.
Yeah.
And if we hyper-focus or hyper-fixate on things that make us feel depressed or that make us feel stressed or that make us feel anxious, then of course we're going to feel like shit. And it's all perspective as well. Like you mentioned the client with who was from South Africa. Over here, the news is on. It's like, oh man, there's all these young kids breaking in houses and shit. It's like fucking one under 16 stole a car last night. But you hear that over and over and over again. You think that it's horrible.
5 states together and it's all on the one news channel. So you're like, there's 15 of them. And it was like 1 in each state or 2 in each state. Like,
yeah. And there's 26 million Australians or 23 million Australians or whatever. So it's like 5 out of 23 million people had their house jacked last night. It's not really that big a deal. But now you go to South Africa, go to Johannesburg. They live in fucking fortresses and they have to have it. Like security is one of their number one resources and number one industry over there. I remember being in Johannesburg and I was in the car with the driver and I was going to the airport from a seminar that I was at. And as I'm going there, I go to take my wallet out of my pocket to go pay him. And I started counting the money and we're at the traffic lights. He literally looked at me, grabbed my hand and smacked my fucking hands. Like my wallet went straight out of my hands. And he looks at me and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, just getting your money. He's like, he looked at me and he goes, don't ever fucking do that at the traffic lights when the car's stopped. He's like, make sure the car's moving. And I was like, sorry, bro. Like I freaked out. I was like, this guy's a fucking psycho. And
no, but the motherfucker next door is.
Well, yeah, we got driving and he said, do you know, it was only a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting at the traffic lights and I heard this tap on the window and this dude smashed the window with a pistol. And he said, I had money just sitting on the side and the dude grabbed his hand in and grabbed the money out and ran and legged it. And then I hear stories about people in Johannesburg and South Africa where, like one of the guys was telling me, I've been there a couple of times. One of the guys was telling me like at nighttime, if you're driving home and the traffic lights are red, you just slow down a little bit and then you just accelerate through the traffic lights. Because if you stop, you're at more risk of getting carjacked.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, man. Like imagine living in that environment and coming to Australia. You're like, oh, man, I walk down the street. I leave my doors open. Like, who cares? This is sweet.
He always says, he's like, there's nothing to worry about here.
Totally. I've got friends and stuff who come from war-torn places, man. And like, for them, just having machine guns and shit that are loaded and cocked, ready to go in your house is normal. Like that's normal for them. So like, yeah, they don't stress about nothing. But again, it's perspective. You have a young kid and you take away their PlayStation. That can be trauma to a child. But it's not trauma. You just took away their PlayStation.
But they don't have like the understanding of the reality and other circumstances and what real trauma, like what real bad situations are, because to them, that is the worst situation that has occurred in their life.
100%. And this is why now there's a lot of millennials that label shit or Gen Zs that label words as violence. They've never had the shit kicked out of them or been stabbed, right? Let them go in like New York or something like that, late at night in the streets.
I don't like your shoes. And they're like, that's violence. I'm like, no, it's definitely not.
Oh man, it's a funny world we live in, but look, all generations go through stuff. Look, when I grew up, man, this is what buzzes me out with the climate change stuff now. Like when I went through, there was this whole thing of the ozone layer depletion and shit like that. And I was freaked out about the ozone layer was going to be like destroyed and Australia was going to be on fire. And now I see the Gen Zs going through it and the millennials, they're going through it and they're all scared and shit about the environment. And I get it, man, because I was that kid. But now I look and I was like, man, we were sweet.
Yeah.
And then I talked to some of my friends and stuff who were in the 70s and they're like, yeah, they told us that the world was going to freeze. Just go back and look at the Big Freeze Time magazine. And you see like, there's always this like, humans have a natural response to fear. That's why it's used so much in marketing. Like I love marketing, but fear is used in marketing. And go walk past a newspaper stand and have a look at the title. It doesn't say like, dude has good day today, right? Because that's what 26 million Australians today are going to wake up and pretty much do the same shit that they did last Friday, right? Or whatever day this podcast comes out, right? Like you wake up, clean your fucking teeth, you use the same hand. Like life doesn't change that much for the average person. It's pretty predictable. And so if you're going to sell news, who the fuck's going to read a newspaper where it's like 26 million Australians drove to work today and no one had a car crash, right? Apart from 3 people. And you're like, yeah, that's not that big a deal. One person out of what are we at now? Like 8 billion people on the planet. There was someone, a bus got bombed and 20 people died. You're like, yeah, out of 8 billion people, that's pretty fucking insignificant. But it's like all the headlines and everything is this fear. Because as humans, when our eyesight is our number one perception for safety, right? Or our number one receptor for safety. So dogs, you'll notice when you walk your dogs, right? They walk around with their nose up and they sniff everything because they have shit eyesight but good smell. We've got good eyesight. So we see things and we look around the environment around us in order to see what's unsafe. And now we see horror car crash on the newspaper. And then we get home, we flip it on. It's like tragedy strikes school kid. And you're like, oh my God. And so now Australians live in this crazy fucking fear that is probably non-existent really, but we over-exaggerate it. And so unfortunately humans, when we're in a fear state, we over-exaggerate the fear because it keeps us safe.
Yeah.
But there's 2 states that we live in. We live in survival or we live in thrival. You decide how you want to live. I'd rather live in thrival and just fucking crush it in life and enjoy it. But that means that you've got to get yourself out of consistent fear, worry, stress, and all of those emotions that keep you stuck.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's interesting, a few of your points, I'm rewinding a little bit
Yeah,
there,
go
so
for
not
it.
on the current point, but, we talked about the comparison of your life with the Jack dude in the gym and all these sort of comparison games that we can start to play. It very much comes back to a very earlier point of relationships. So you may look at that Jack guy in the gym and think, I want to be like him. I want to be that jacked. I want to be that. But you don't look at the behind the scenes. Just like social media, we see the lavish lifestyle, the business person that's on holidays, laptop by the beach. Cool. I want that. We look at the relationships of our friends or those around us because they can fake it while you're around them at dinner and they could smile and they give each other a kiss and massive hug and they go home and then they argue. The whole game here is that you're comparing the grass is always greener on the other side, all these sort of things, but you're not willing to look below the surface and really understand what is the cost or what is actually the reality of that. And that comes back, like what I was saying before, is that, the reality versus your expectation.
100%.
And if that expectation is not met by reality, you are disappointed. So if you could get more accurate about your expectations, you're going to be pretty good. Like if you have more, but that comes with understanding. Understanding social media is not real. Understanding what it actually takes to win in business. Understanding what it takes to get that physique. Understanding what it takes to have that successful long-term relationship and playing that infinite game. Until you can have those expectations, you're always going to feel in lack of.
100%. Something that I would love to share, which I probably haven't shared that often here. I do it at my events and stuff. But every time you see a benefit, ask yourself about the disadvantages or the downsides or the drawbacks of that thing. And so what I mean by that is you see the Jack guy in the gym or the hot looking girl and you compare yourself to them. You got to ask yourself, what's the disadvantages of that? So I never used to do that. But now when I look at the Jack dude in the gym, I'm like, man, that's a solid work ethic. Like, well done to them. But I also know that comes with food prep. Now, do I want to spend 2 hours or 3 hours on a Saturday or Sunday doing food prep? No, not really. I'd rather just go out and I go out 4 times a week or 5 times a week for business meetings and shit, and I eat a lot. So do I really give, what's more important, the 6-pack or the relationships that I have? Yeah, the relationships. Can I still look after myself and not be ripped and have veins coming out of my abs and still enjoy life? I'm probably going to enjoy life more by not having that goal.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's not what that person enjoys because they have different value structures and they have different, a different success map in life. So if you just look at the downsides, the good-looking booty girl, if you're skinny, it's hard to put on muscle, right? So when you see someone who's skinny but has a good body, they're probably training pretty hard. Also, if you've got someone who's got the ability to put on more muscle, they have the ability to put on more fat. I get jacked.
It all comes
quick.
up together, sort of thing.
It does, but once I start eating food, man, the muscle cranks, but so does the fat as well. So that's tough as well. So for me, my struggle isn't training and putting on size; it's diet and stuff like that. So you have to look at those downsides. See someone with a McLaren. Well, he's lucky because he's got heaps of money.
Life must be easy, What
are the downsides of having heaps of money? Well, dude's got to work all the time. He's got to manage staff. He's probably got lots of clients that he has to manage. If you're managing staff and clients, you've got to manage a lot of expectations. Then you always get pissed off people because they don't get what they think that they want. And so, there's a lot of challenges and a lot of shit. I guess I'm on social media a bit and things like that. I get attacked a bit on there and, but it is what it is. That's part of the game. You go and have a look at anyone who's crushing it on social media and just Google their name. It comes up with so much negative shit. One of my mentors actually, who's become a mate of mine now, he was a wicked coach who was able to help me to grow my business just organically a bit more. And you Google his name and fuck the amount of hate, people attack him, but they use his name as leverage because he's got a big audience. He's got over 1 million followers and things like that. But for me, when I look at it, people complain and they're like, "Oh, I didn't get the results that he promised," and it's like, well, I got better than what he promised. So what made me different to you? I put in more work. You didn't. I get it, but people read that shit and they reinforce it. In fact, I had a post the other day about it, and this person messaged me and they're like, be careful with him, man. He's a fucking scammer. And I was like, okay. And this guy wrote this big long post, and he had a blocked out profile. And I said, why don't you have your name and shit on there? Why should I trust you? And he said, I've been following you for ages. I listen to your podcast. I love what you do, but be careful with him, man. He's a scammer. I said, what do you mean by what has he done? And he said, just Google his name and look over the internet. And I said, but has he done anything to you? And he goes, well, no, not me, but I've Googled his name and this is the shit that comes up. And I said, so you trust Google, but I'm telling you that I've got better results working with him than what I have with other coaches. So I'm telling you that I've made millions off of the knowledge that he's given me. And you're looking at the internet, looking and researching people that think that he's a scammer. Who's right and who's wrong? And I said, second of all, he hasn't done anything for you. Man, be very careful just like Googling shit on the internet, because you'll find what you're looking for. Same as in life. Like I have people come to me all the time and they go, man, there's no good staff around. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they go, well, there's no good staff out there at the moment. And this has been this way for 2 or 3 years. And I say, maybe you're just shit as a business owner.
No one wants to work for you.
Exactly right. Like, so maybe you keep looking for shit staff because you're not getting better. And I think a lot of people look for reasons to back up their own shit in life instead of going, how do I get better? How do I perform? How do I win? You know, when the economy turns to shit, like it's the best time. I've made all of my money. Actually, I haven't made all of my money. I've made a lot of money in the share market when the economy's fucked. Why? Because people freak out and they skits out and they do dumb shit and they sell good shares for cheap. And I go in and I buy good shares for cheap.
Remove the emotion.
Yeah, because that's exactly right. So I think a lot of the time, like when people say, you know, there's no money in the economy or the cost of living crisis, I just sit there and I go, is there really a cost of living crisis, or is it just people who are reinforcing what they believe to be true? Were these people always struggling before the cost of living crisis, or has the cost of living crisis maybe made it a bit more obvious to them? Like maybe they were struggling financially and now, you know, there's this, things have tightened up a little bit and now they're feeling it. I get it. But are they telling me that they didn't have, or they never had any money problems and now all of a sudden, you know, avocados have gone up by $1 and now they're fucking struggling? That doesn't make sense to me.
Amplified.
Yeah, so it just makes things worse. So I look at that and I go, okay, well, how do we change that? How do we make it different? And then you ask, like, where is the money? So people making shit tons of money still. I have people who, like business clients, they're like, I got a client I'm working with at the moment. In the last 12 months, he went from a $20 million business. I've been working for him for 2 years. He came to me when he was making 12 mil a year. The first year he went from 12 to 20 mil. And then in the last 12 months, he's gone from 20 to yesterday sent me a message and said, we just cracked 75. That's a lot of growth in 12 months. Now, if someone's saying there's a cost of living crisis, he ain't got no fucking crisis. Yeah. So maybe we just need to be a bit more adaptable. Anyway, I went way off track there, but
it's interesting.
My point is, like, anytime you see an upside and you're over exaggerating how good something is, look for the downside. The dude with all the money, what's the disadvantages of having a lot of money? People want more shit off of you. People have expectations. I have people who come to me all the time and they go, well, you shouldn't charge as much. Why? Well, you've got heaps of money. Well, fuck you. Maybe that's why I have lots of money. Yeah, but you shouldn't charge that much. Why? It's private business.
You don't have to do it.
Yeah,
you can find the guy that doesn't charge as much. That's fine.
you say you want to help people. If you really cared about people, you wouldn't charge the money. And I'm like, well, maybe you just don't care about me. Maybe the thing that I'm selling is a great lifestyle. And I think that people deserve a great life. I think everyone deserves a great lifestyle. So why would you undercharge or undervalue yourself?
Yeah.
I've spent millions learning, millions. In fact, I've spent like 70 something grand this year already on coaches and mentors. So why would I not want to get that money back when I've invested in myself? So just be careful with that. But also as well, what I'm saying is that anytime you've got the downsides, always look for the upsides. So when someone comes to me and they're like, I can't understand why, you know, that person doesn't want to break their depression, right? And I say, well, what are the benefits that they get from being depressed? And they always say there are no benefits. And I say, bullshit. Because every living organism, this fucks people up. This is biology. Every living organism moves away from things that it believes is self-destructive. So if you put a toxin in a petri dish, a single cell bacteria will move away from it. It doesn't move into the toxin, it moves away. So if something is damaging to our lives, why would we go towards it? Doesn't make sense, does it? So why would we hold on to something that hurts us bad? Good question, right? No one asks these questions. So to me, like, if these emotions are causing us so much pain, why do we want to keep hold of them?
The excuse that it provides.
There could be heaps of reasons, right? Like, there are plenty of kids who their parents, like, let's say, there's literature on this where young girls with eating disorders, especially anorexia, it seems to be a common pattern that there's literature out there that shows that it can potentially be a control issue of trying to control a parental figure, right? And so it can be used as a form of manipulation. And so not only are they trying to control their food, they're trying to control what happens in the family dynamic. So that could potentially, I'm not saying that it is, because there, every case you've got to be specific. That's the reason why I'm saying, like, not every case of depression, if we generalize it and say every case of depression is this, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that if we just generalize, there are common patterns that we've got to look for. So you go, okay, if someone's depressed all the time, what do they get? Well, they can get sympathy. They can get attention. They can get affection. People can take the pressure off of them. Like if you're depressed at school, can you get more time off of school? Yeah. Well, if you don't like school, well, fucking you just got a trophy there. If you don't want to do exams, do you get extra time? So there are plenty of benefits that they get from having these issues, which can reinforce the patterns. Now, like I said, I know that this is going to piss some people off and whatever, but it's just saying if you ask the right questions and you look at things from multiple different angles, everything's not black and white and it's not always super clear. There are plenty of people who go through a lot of pain. Like there are reasons why people suffer financially. Why do people suffer financially? Well, because sometimes there are plenty of benefits to not having a lot of money. If you're getting government handouts all the time, why would you want to work? Like if
pandemic exposed that a lot, didn't it? Because a lot of people after post-pandemic, they're kind of like, oh, this is kind of good.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it.
And I mean, anyone knows that, right? Like, and I'm not saying that again, this is very specific. There are plenty of people out there who don't work because the government gives them free handouts. Why would they want to work? Because they don't have enough paying. Take away the handouts, see what happens. But that could also cause other issues like, society issues, more cars getting stolen.
They're there for a good reason at the same time as well. And that's why like the people that complain on the flip side, like, oh, they're just taking my money. I'm like, well, it's better than taking your car.
100%. So look, I hope that, I know people are going to be pissed. Some people are going to be pissed with this, but like the real thing that I'm getting at with all of this is, number one, you need to have clarity around what you want in life. You need to understand who you are in life. Just like the Greeks said, know thyself, be thyself. The way you do that is you get clear with a map for your life. If you're in a relationship, get clear on what you want in the relationship, get your partner clear on what they want in a relationship, and then get together and work towards what you have clarity that you're both working for together in the relationship. And now you both win.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to, number one, getting clear first. Number two is that anything that has a benefit also has a drawback, and anything that has a drawback has a benefit. I think we live in a pretty weird world where so many people just see a benefit or a drawback. When people get pissed all weekend, they're like, man, I had the best weekend. I'm like, did you really? Did you really? Because like yesterday morning when you woke up with a hangover, that wasn't good. Like Saturday night was good, but
bring it all together.
Yeah. When you were blowing all your cash, like it felt good, but you woke up, when you have a look and you take a bit of a different perspective, you see it from a different light.
Yeah.
And our whole life is like, if we look at things from different perspectives, you see things in a different light. I think that it's a little bit ignorant in this day and age where there's so much information and so much knowledge out there that people just take one perspective and run with it instead of asking better questions and looking at different perspectives.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as well with a lot of these topics, like correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you're not arguing that these things exist. People can have depression, can have anxiety, can have these disorders, whatever.
100%.
But that person that's watching this right now knows, if they're that person that's wearing that as a label deliberately for the reasons you just said then. And that's the message you're trying to portray. Is there's so many people that are hiding behind that. Or say, take the cost of living crisis. Is that a thing? Highly likely.
Yeah, I mean, probably is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it would be very hard to argue, the housing market and all these sort of things,
100%.
whatever. But what are we saying is, now what are you going to do about it? Because unfortunately, you don't have the power to run into Parliament and be like, let's do X, Y, and Z. If you want to make an impact, maybe you can start to do the things in the political party, right? The letters do this. Maybe they won't listen. Maybe they will. But what you can do is we have the fucking internet, which is a really powerful tool. Maybe you could start to learn some skills to make a bit of side income, selling fucking dog beds while you do this but it depends on what you want in your priorities. And it's like, it's what you do in that situation. It's not that the external, like you said, the environment around you is going to continuously change. It's just how you adapt to that environment.
Yes.
Cost of living post-pandemic, a bit of a challenge. What are we going to do about it? Maybe it is hard, but okay, we still now have to keep moving forward. We have no other options. It's hard currently. We can't go back in time and change that. Yeah. So we've got to move forward.
Use pain as a motivator. You mentioned that there are some people who have anxiety and stuff like that and know that they're hiding behind a label. I don't think that most people do. What I would say though is go and have a look at the benefits of what that gives you. Because when I work with people and I say, grab a pen and paper and just sit there and say, look, sit there and force your brain to come up with at least 50 to 100 benefits of having anxiety. And then what happens is Carl Jung, who was a famous psychiatrist, he said that until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate. And what he's really saying is like, you might have these anxious patterns, but until you're aware of what you get out of it, then that's going to just control your life. I think it would be a good idea to just, if you're going through anything right now, just grab a pen and paper and write down what are the benefits of going through what I'm going through, and watch what happens to the emotion. It almost neutralizes it. So
do you mean benefits from what you're going to get on the once you get past it? Is that what you're referring to?
Could be. It could also be what you got from it in the past. It could be what you're getting from it now. Like, I'll give you an example. Relationship breakup, person comes in, they're distraught, and I'm like, cool, what are the benefits of the breakup? Now, when your emotions are high, your intelligence is low. You use different brain structures for emotions versus your intelligence. Prefrontal cortex, neocortex, the more outer crust, the more evolved part of the brain is logic. Then as we dive down deeper, you have the emotional centers of the brain and some of the survival centers, some of the reflexes. So when we're emotional, it's very, very hard to have a logical conversation with yourself or others. And we've all been there, right? Like, someone's fucking flipping out and you're like trying to logically guide them through it. You might as well just sit there and just fucking cry, because there's nothing that you can say where they're like, actually, that's a great point. I have it with my missus sometimes.
Unless you agree with them perfectly, then they might say that.
Yeah, she'll be upset sometimes. I'm like, so what you're saying is da-da-da-da. And she's like, no, but it's because he did this and that. And I'm like, but hang on. And then I'm like,
30 minutes.
I ask her, I've got a little way of communicating with her. I say, do you want husband or business owner? And she goes, no, I just want my husband. And I go, okay. And I go, come here, you're upset, aren't you? And she's like, yeah, I am. And I'm like, give me a hug. And then I give her a hug and it's fucking sweet. If I'm logical business owner, all it does is it reinforces the emotion with her. So yeah, anytime she's emotional and she says, I just want my husband, I sit there, I listen to her emotions, and then I give her a hug and we're sweet. If I go into logic and I try to coach her through, or I try to help her like a business person would, man, we are in deep shit, man.
You're in the doghouse.
that earth energy, the hurricane's coming, man. This is going to be like a 3-day event now. So yeah, but if you can just calm down a little bit and try and sort of balance yourself out just a tad, you might have to go and change your environment. So, if you've just gone through a relationship breakup and you're distraught, instead of sitting at home in an environment where your partner used to be and losing your shit for the next week, go and change the environment. Go to a cafe, sit there with a pen and paper and go, what are the benefits of going through the breakup? And once you list out 50 to 100 things, all of a sudden you're like, actually, this isn't as bad as what I thought. This is perfect time. I had a guy reach out to me the other day and he said, I've just gone through this breakup and I was feeling a bit distraught, but I just realized like it's a perfect opportunity for me to get my body back. Like, I gave up on my body. I can work on myself a bit more. I can get better. I want to start a business. Maybe this is the time to do it. And I was like, fuck yeah, bro. Well done. Right? Because he's starting to see the benefits of that thing. When we only see massive amounts of disadvantages, we can become really negative in our own thinking. When we see just an upside and all these benefits, we over-exaggerate it and we can become highly driven towards it without realizing that we're just about to get smashed with a ton of pain. So, I guess in a way, like if you hyper-exaggerate, because I know a lot of guys listen to this, let's say, and I'll give you a really good example of this, you're a 50-year-old businessman, you've made hundreds of millions of dollars, and now all of a sudden you've had 3 divorces, you've got 8 kids with 3 different women, and now you've found the love of your life, and you've been dating her for 6 weeks, and you take her out on your private yacht and everything like that, and she's loving life, and she's the fucking love of your life. And they come to you and say, do you know what? I think I've found the one. I think I'm going to marry this one. What would you say?
I don't know about that.
Right? Because you know that they have just over-exaggerated the shit out of what's going on there. This guy's got a lot of money. This person's a young woman. She's going on yachts and things like that. Do you think that he's over-exaggerating maybe the relationship a little bit? Maybe. Do you think that he could get torched in the future? Probably. Do you think that he's going to have a lot of pain if he keeps pursuing the relationship in the manner that he is? Probably. That pain is balancing out his inflated exaggeration of benefits or positives. So what my point is that anytime we see things like the bodybuilder and the guy in the gym with the ripped abs or the person with all the money, if you notice that you're being really harshly driven towards that thing, without thinking about all the downsides and all the challenges, grab a pen and paper and go, what are all the negatives of that?
Yeah.
And what you'll do is you'll neutralize it. And you're like, like if I look at the bodybuilder, I look at him and I'm like, if I wanted that body, I could get it. But the truth is, am I prepared to do it? Nah, probably not. Okay, cool. That I know that that's not a real goal. If it's a real goal, you're like, I will take the shit with the good and I'll go through hell and back because that's what I want.
Yeah.
And that's why some people achieve and others don't. Most people in life, when they set goals, will never achieve the things that they want. And the reason is that they're not really their goals. They're somebody else's goals. And they think that they're going to get something that isn't really true. Like you asked a question about money, what was it? Money
Does
being
it buy
good
happiness? Yeah.
does it buy happiness? And the answer is no. It just amplifies everything that we have going on for the exact same reason, right? There are benefits to having more money and there's disadvantages to having more money. I say to people all the time, like, how many broke people do you know who have been sued?
Probably, well, unless they're broke because they got sued.
Yeah, but how many people saw a broke person?
Yeah, no.
I'm going to walk in and spend $500 an hour in order to take someone to court with no money. Ain't going to happen. No one sues a broke person unless they're a fucking moron, and there are plenty of morons out there, but no one sues a broke person. They sue rich people though. And I was working with a client years ago. He's a big property developer, and he was getting sued. And now this dude, when he was young, was homeless. And I said, man, he was stressed out. He's like, I can't believe this motherfucker's suing me bad. And he's going nuts. And I said to him, come on, let's go for a walk. So I went for a walk around where his offices are. And I said, bro, imagine when you were on the street. Like, go back to the moment you're living on the street and you're washing yourself in a toilet block, right? You're literally going and using a tap to wash your armpits and your fucking balls and shit. And I said, go back to that moment. If I told you that you were going to get sued for $3 to $5 million back then, what would have you said? And he started laughing. And he said, I would have told you that you're a fucking idiot. And I said, I know. And I said, man, how do you feel about getting sued now? And he goes, I guess it's not that bad, is it? And he said, obviously they're suing me because I got a lot of money. And I said, I know, that's not that bad. Right. And that really dissolved the emotion from him. He was so pissed off and frustrated because he couldn't believe that someone was suing him. But look, man, $3 to $5 million for that guy stung. But it would be like, someone who's earning 80 grand a year getting sued for, 3 or 4 grand. Right? It's bullshit and you fucking hate it and you know that you're in the right. But the question is it really that big a deal? And it's not. And so he just went to court. He had the case. I think it came to a resolution where he paid a little bit of money, but it wasn't even close. And then he walked away from the case and, he had what he wanted and the other, well, actually he had a bit of what he wanted with a sting and the other dude had a little bit of what he wanted with a sting. And that's how the court systems work most of the time. Not all the time, but
I think that's also like an opportunity then within that. So let's say someone's going to sue him. It's like, well, is there a good reason for this? Like maybe you deserved it. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe, the same as if someone says it's like, you know what, you're a bit of a shit bloke, you know that? And you're like, I always like to be like, sit back and be like, before I go, no, I'm not. Like, okay, I'll say that straight away. I'll be like, fuck off. No way. No, I'm not. But then go home and be like, why do they think that? Is there any truth to that? And get real honest with yourself because it might be true. And then from there, you have the ability to grow as a person. But if we always just put our shield up and go, nope, not me.
Yeah.
Well, then you're not growing either. So for him, get sued. Did I do something wrong? Before I go out and be like, no, it's bullshit. This guy's making it up. Da 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 da. It's like maybe there's some fact there. Yeah. Maybe there's some truth. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to grow and maybe you've slipped in making the money. You've lost some of your morals and values or whatever it is. Or, in becoming more jacked in the gym, you've become a bit of a prick to the people that are skinnier. But then you realize, they were once me. Maybe I should bring them up with me as well. And all these sort of things. It's like there may be some truth behind the shit that people are saying to you. So get real with yourself as well. But if you can sit there and be like, no, I don't think that's true. All right, well, then let's go with that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but let's go with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. All situations in life are that, but you've got to be self-reflective and self-aware enough, I think, in order to do that. A lot of people aren't. But if anyone's going through a pattern where the same thing keeps happening, like if you're up to your 4th marriage, there's a pattern there that's not being dealt with. It's a you problem. Yeah, and like people make money, lose money. I work with business owners all the time. They're like, man, I had all this money and then it's gone. Or I had all these staff and now there's a pattern there. And so that pattern there's something going on. And I think in business, part of the thing that most people don't understand, and I have to have this conversation in like my business events, To go bankrupt is highly likely in business because it's a high risk. Like anytime you start a business, it's high risk. Self-employment, not so much. But a real legitimate business, there's a high likelihood you'll go bankrupt. And in Australia, people who haven't run businesses like, oh, see, he's bankrupt, he's shit at business. It's not that. That's like saying that when you're a professional athlete, you're shit because your team lost. You're playing the game. In that game, you're going to get your ass kicked a lot. And in business, you get your ass kicked a lot. You'll get your ass kicked with staff. You'll get your ass kicked with money and finances. You'll get your ass kicked legally. You'll get your ass kicked with tax. There's just so many issues that can go on. And that's why a real business where you're an entrepreneur, not only do you need to surround yourself with the right people who are highly intelligent. And when you start playing in big business, the people there are like fucking off the scale on their IQ, or you're dealing with people who are on the spectrum. Like there's a lot of people there that are super highly intelligent, or they're massively adaptable and have huge amounts of courage and fucking pumpkin nuts. So when you start playing with those people, you're walking into the gym, or you're walking into a boxing gym and getting in the ring with heavyweights. And so there are a lot of people who think that business is, an easy game because they come from a working environment. Like I'll hear people say things like, well, why can't a property developer just give people a refund, or just, they can't because they literally go bankrupt if like they pay a builder, the builder pays, these people, the plumber sort of fucked up a job, the plumber puts something over the top, then the carpenters come and do something over the top of that. In order to get back to that one thing, there's so many other issues that could cost tens of thousands of dollars, whereas you think it's one little problem. There's so much more that goes on with it. If that happens on a whole development site, that developer is completely bankrupt. They're fucking gone, potentially. So there's a lot of shit that can go on in business that people just don't realize. Like, I have some people sometimes come to my events and they'll be like, well, I can't understand why I don't have a refund. And I'm like, well, what do you mean a refund? You didn't rock up. Yeah, but I didn't rock up, so it didn't cost you anything. Hang on, it did, motherfucker, because I pay for the venue, I pay for the coffees and shit that come in. All of that stuff gets paid 6 months earlier. The printing, all of that costs money. Oh, well, yeah, but you've got plenty of, but they don't understand because they've never been in that situation. They just don't understand how it operates. So a lot of business owners actually feel really alone because most people just don't understand. But coming back to your thing, the self-reflective part, that's where growth is. And Tony Robbins said something many years ago, which was a great quote. He said, when we win, we celebrate, but when we lose, we ponder. And all growth comes from pondering. So most people, when they do well in life for a little while, they put their head up their ass and then eventually everything turns to shit and all they can see is shit. If you want to do well in life, you have to know that the pondering and getting your ass kicked is actually where all the growth happens. So, and I was talking to one of my staff members the other day, and this was probably about 2 weeks ago, actually. She works in my marketing team and great person. I put her onto a new task and she's offshore, so she's from the Philippines. And anyway, I said, look, you look worried on this new project. And she said, I'm okay. And I said, what's going on? And she said, she started crying and she said, I just don't want to fail. And I turned around and I said to her, Danny, I fail every day, which is the reason why I'm good. And I said, look how many things I've fucked up this week. And I said, but the thing is, when I fuck them up, I learn from it and then I get a little bit better. And then I fuck that up and I get a little bit better. And the more I fuck things up, the better I get. But you have to be aware enough to realize that when you make mistakes, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing bad about it. I don't attach emotions to it. It's just part of the game.
Yeah.
And then I get a little bit better and then I grow. Whereas I think so many people in our society, because of the school system, are so afraid of failure because they got a cross on their paper and the other kids look at them and go, oh, see, you're dumb. And then they get home and mum and dad say, what happened? How come you didn't get the mark? How come you got a C? Why didn't you get an A? And so after a while, you start feeling like there's something wrong with you when you don't get everything right. And so people just stop trying because they feel like that there's something wrong with them when they fail. The top performers know that failure is the path.
Yeah. You
cannot have success without failure. And you cannot have failure without another learning to help you to become more successful. So embrace the failure and go.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of my clients, PT clients, he owns multiple hotels, and he came to me today and he was like, Jordan, really interesting thing that he went to an event in Damien Hardwick, who does he coach now? Gold Coast, maybe? I think in the AFL.
Yep.
And he was talking about tennis players. And I think to be the world number one in tennis, he said, you actually only have to win 54% of sets.
Yep.
54%, you go, hang on a second, that's 4% more than half. You're like, that's definitely doable, you know? And then you go again and you go, Michael Jordan missed more shots than he made. You go, hang on a second, what's starting to add up here is in the fact that you're going to have lots of failures. It's not that you are choosing to try and fail. It's just that in the pursuit of achieving what you're going after, those things will come along the way, and it's how you adapt and grow and become a better version. But realizing that it actually doesn't take much more than average to do really well.
Yeah, there's some really good studies about that. Like I love reading about sports performance, and there's just so much good literature out there that a lot of people gloss over. But I think there were studies done on tennis, and what they showed you was that amateur tennis players, the goal, like if you want to win an amateur tennis match, just hit the ball over the fucking net and just make sure you don't hit the ball into the net or out of the court. So what it showed was that in amateur tennis, if you try to be good, you'll probably lose a lot more than if you just try to be not shit. And that's really what the studies came down to. But when you're a professional tennis player, the goal is that you need to know exactly where you're going to hit the ball. You need to know exactly where it's going to go. So the game is a completely different game from amateurs to professionals. So if you're starting a business, the starter business is like, just don't do anything that's going to fucking destroy the business. Get a little bit of advice, get a little bit of money, play around with it. You know, you don't want to go and take your whole home loan and go, right, I'm going to buy into this business and essentially mortgage your house, because that's probably a huge risk immediately. But you got to be careful, because if you read the books, it's like, well, I mortgaged my house. But you mortgage your house on your third business, the one that now is the $1 billion company. You don't talk about the 3 that you fucked up beforehand in order to realize that you could do that. The risks that I take right now are massive. Like, you know, I'm spending 150K to go to the US and I don't have 150K. Like, our business at the moment, we're consolidating. So we're essentially running at break even. And now all of a sudden I'm like, right, I'm going to the US. I got this US trip. It's probably going to cost about 150 grand. So we have to go, and I committed to it because I got a podcast over there, and I was like, fuck it, I might as well just do a big tour over there and work with some of the big coaches over there that I've done stuff with before in the past. So that there, we didn't have 150K sitting around, but I just had to figure it out. Now I can drop that hammer because I back myself. I know that I'll make it work. Whereas in the past, if I first started and I put 150K, I would have gone bankrupt and lost everything.
Yeah.
So there's always a time and a place for everything. Failure is part of the game, but you've got to know how much you can risk in order to get where you want to get. Risk is part of the game, but you don't want to risk big early on because of the whole tennis thing. Just make sure you get the ball over the net. Don't worry about winning the game. Just worry about getting the fucking ball over the net. And the other player eventually will hit the ball into the net and you'll win the game or win the match. So, yeah.
Perfect.
That makes sense.
Excellent. All right. We might wrap things up there, Michael. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. So much value in there for not just young men, but everyone out there, business people, all sorts. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.